time to spill the secrets.
This is Universal Secrets with Tiffany Mack and Kevin Hale.
That old rock and roll vibe.
I know, I'm jamming in the background.
Rock stars that you are. Yeah. I'm like a roadie or groupie.
Oh, a grody. I don't think I like that
not
term.
A grow. Yeah, I guess if you combine the two, it's a grody. Not a groupie.
A groupie. How's that?
Yeah, I could be a groupie. Universal. Well, let me start. I'm forgetting. It's Tuesday night. You know what that means?
Universal Secrets.
We are here. Universal Secrets on this Tuesday night, June 29th. Tiffany Mack, Kevin Hale doing our thing. We got to give a shout out real quick. I mean, this is I kind of affectionately call it Secrets 3.0. It's it's a reboot, if you will. Kind of a third time around for our brand. We wrapped up with KGRA last Tuesday, did a farewell show, which was great. It was one of our prouder shows.
Right? I had a great time. We had some awesome guests that came to join us for our farewell and did a little bit of sharing of their own that was well deserved and you know, with some of our favorite guests. Of course, we can't include them all in there, but we did get a few to send us off on our new way. So that was very cool.
Kind of come full circle, if you will. The circle of life. Can you sing? So,
I can sing, but Kevin, I'm not going to do that.
Not ready yet?
No.
All right. How many? So let's give some love. KGRA was a great platform for us. We had a 10-month run. They're going through some changes, and we decided to kind of go in a different direction. So we wish nothing but the best to our friends over there. They're still friends.
Absolutely. And
some of our friends who, we met, as viewers are hanging with us, decide to, continue this ride with us. And, we're going to keep promoting KGRA. There'll always be an important platform of friends over there. And, we're going to stay true to supporting the whole paranormal community.
Yeah.
But tonight it's about us.
It is. So it's not just about us.
No, it's not about us. Because, sharing this kind of reboot, we called out to some people, some friends, and we've got a very cool lineup tonight. I was like, what's one more show for these people to come on? And, they've probably been talking ad nauseum, of what went down last Friday, and we'll get into that in a second. Before we, introduce our guests, who, I'm going to say Ryan Sprague and Micah Hanks will be on in the next couple minutes, and then Sean Cahill, who will join us around 8:30, and he's kind of a important dude when it comes to all those videos and stuff, the TikTok and all that stuff that went down in December of 2017. But first things first, shooting from the lip, we are running this live on our Facebook and YouTube channels, the video, the audio, Radio, partnering with Ronald and those cool people over at Radio to do the audio. So here it is. Check this out, Tiffany. For people who, we'll make it easy. Take your cell phone. If you're watching on your cell phone, you can't do it. But if you're watching on the computer, take your cell phone, take a picture, go to your camera, take a picture of this. Go to your browser, and this will give you a link to its Linktree, which will share all of our social media: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Which, Tiffany, you're going to step up your game on a couple of those, because we're doing our own thing.
Yes. That's, you have to rub it in, but I had a
prodding you, not rubbing in.
Right. I had a little situation yesterday that sort of shocked me a bit. My stepfather decided to look my name up. And I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. But, he looked me up and he told my mom, he's like, she only has like a small amount of followers. And I just sat there for a second and I was like, where did he think I have followers? Because I don't have any followers. I don't even know what he's talking about. So Kevin and I decided that, yes, Tiffany has to start working with the Twitter and the YouTube and any other platform to help promote our show. Because I'm a bum when it comes to that stuff. So I didn't even have a clue what he was talking about. And at first I thought he was talking about Facebook followers. And I was like, I really might have only one or two. I don't have a clue.
I'm assuming he's talking social media, not one of those other sites, sites online.
I have no idea. Back in the day when I was in Greece, I had Tiffany's Playground, which probably had a lot more followers, people, than today.
That sounds so adult.
It does. It sounds fantastic. That was the way I communicated with my friends and family back in the States, but it sounded so fun.
Okay, we might have to hashtag Tiffany's Playground. That'd be a segment on the show. We have to do that.
Well, I'd have to come up with some fake stories and fake news to go along with it.
Facts are optional on the show. You know that.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
Give a shout out, because we've got some familiar faces who were on that ride with us for the last 10 months who are joining us tonight.
I'm so excited. Yes. Yeah. So let's see who we have. Okay, so we've got Rodrigo, and he's in Portugal, I believe. We have the Outcasts Creative, Blackbeard. I've never heard of Blackbeard, so this is a new one for us. Andy Morrow, Sherry Trimble. We've got, I saw Maria in there, Maria Duff. We've got a lot of people listening. Earth Radio, Ron. Okay, Bobby's out there. I haven't seen his name, but I know that he is out there helping share our show tonight. Ufology, who did an awesome promo that was aired on Earth Radio, and we have to play that at some point because it was absolutely awesome. Let's see who else. I know that Queen Colleen is out there. Erica's out there. Natalie Wright's out there. There's Bobby. Hey, Bobby and Lords. There we go.
What else is? You know what else is out there?
The
truth.
The truth.
Yeah. Speaking of the truth, Ryan Sprague.
Ryan, let's see. Get him off mute.
Is he doing it or I'm doing it?
I don't know. There we go. And Micah, the doctor, is in.
You were ragging on Micah and his whole petite status. That whole petite thing going on.
Yeah, he's been running and working out like a fool.
Well, it's actually just my schedule. I just work so much that I burn those calories naturally. Yeah. It's just kind of the times, I suppose, right?
Sweetheart, you need to start. You got to remember the meals.
I'll work on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet you just sit around and write all day and do research and forget about, making those grilled cheese sandwiches with Munster cheese.
Look, this is actually true. 25 minutes ago when you and I were texting, I was actually finishing another article at that moment. So
I believe it.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me.
And I'm going to probably go out on a limb at Ryan probably finished another podcast or interview before coming on.
I did.
I thought I was going to get a message from him. Kev, my voice is gone. I've been talking.
I'm not that much of a diva, Kev. Come on, man. Hey, first of all, I want to congratulate you guys on the reboot. Cheers.
Thank you.
To you guys.
Okay, so
I know,
guys,
I know what it's like going out on your own, and it's scary and exciting and fun. And
well, you guys are inspiration.
Kudos.
You really are. I mean, we're not anywhere near, this level, Tiffany, of present company.
Hey,
but we got a goal.
That guy is my inspiration right there.
I know. I
me
believe
inspired,
him. Okay, so I'm gonna have one beverage, people. Okay, one little drink. Otherwise, I'll turn bright red. So we don't want that to happen. But this is Tsikudia. This is like raki. It's pure grain liquor from Greece. And I figured since we were going to be talking a little bit about the Nimitz and what happened back in 2004, I'm going to make a cheers, yamas, toast to all of the men and women who served and all of the people who were involved in this project that has been ongoing. And especially since we have two former military and government employees coming on later with us this evening. So this will be my one sip, guys. Okay. So this is to them and everybody else.
Cheers.
Here we go.
Cheers to that. And of course, since we're talking about folks who have served our country, I happen to know Tiffany Mack. You have a bit of a background in that regard. Service, but nonetheless, serving our country and doing so proudly. So I want to thank you very much for that, bestie.
Thank you.
Always,
thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't wear a uniform, but I did sweat, blood, and tears right along with them, and I loved every bit, even as stressful it was during a time of war. But it makes me appreciate all of the effort that is being done, especially for our UFO community, and trying to get as much information released to the public. So that's my little blurb here for you guys.
I teased our friends, in the chat room with us, either the last show or one of the last shows, about quizzing them at the end, making sure they're paying attention, because they have great conversation in the chat. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I get distracted from the guests, and I'm watching what they are talking about. But here's a case. Where's it at? Damn it, I just had it. Oh, because they do pay attention, Tiffany, when it comes to your alcohol. Your neck, could you get the red? Yes. Maria, spot on. Cheers.
Yes, Maria. My sister knows.
See, I was on watching Entity Voices one night, and on KJRA, they do their Monday night show, and it's Paranormal Ghost. And I kept, the stuff they were showing, the evidence they were showing, everyone was like, wow. And I just challenged everyone in the chat room. The next time we see either hear with the word wow or typed or it's in the chat, you got to take a shot. Could you imagine? So you took that
upon yourself to start drinking heavily during the show?
I suggested. I didn't do it, but I'm like, but that would be a fun little game. Mm-hmm. And tonight, I think we might have a wow moment or two. Maybe
it may come out of my mouth a few times.
Well, I'm gonna get before we really get going, because this is a very light, laid back show, infotainment, to coin. I got that from Alan B. Smith. Ryan, you haven't seen this. I want to tell you, this is some of the nonsense that goes on with our show, and people who are listening on the audio, you're missing out on the visual. And if you can watch it later. Ryan, there's Tiffany and Micah obviously have some history, and some of it is pure nonsense. But this particular clip that I'm getting ready to show you, when I first saw it, I'm thinking, who's the hottie with Tiffany? And then I was like, oh, it's...
Do you love The Shining? I just love it. Do you love
it? Oh my god, you guys look like what are their names? The not the hobbits, but the elves.
Yes,
from the Lord of the Rings.
Yes. We had so much fun. That was the weekend that Micah came up and we went to Monster Fest in Louisville or in Frankfort, Kentucky. And we spent the whole weekend laughing, giggling, and cutting up. And we had such a great time making little videos. It was the first weekend I had gotten Snapchat. And I was like, what do you do with Snapchat?
Well,
and that's what you do. You do stupid shit like that.
That's like my dad when he first learned emojis. That's all I get now. It's just like a wall of emojis that make no sense. I'm like,
I love
cool,
that.
Dad. Yeah, maybe we'll make our own language out of that.
But now listen, we were also doing some serious contemplating about cryptozoological possibilities. Don't leave that part out, Tiff.
Oh,
exactly.
And we did some interviews. We got some good interviews. I have no idea where they went.
I still got all those, on an SD card someplace. They also went on the podcasts, but I thought that was really good, though. Yeah, and in fact, again, T-Mac, bringing her A game, got the press passes all linked up, booked all these interviews. It was actually very impressive, Tiffany, and we had a great time up there talking with all these folks. You know who was there? Who I met for the very first time was Cliff Barrickman, and of course, he's best known from the TV series Finding Bigfoot. But Cliff was there. Bobo was there too, and now those guys are doing a podcast called Bigfoot and Beyond. That's quite fun as well. So, but anyway, it was a really good time. Everybody was out there. Lyle Blackburn, David Weatherly. So
Dave Spinks.
Oh, man.
Dave Spinks. Yeah. And you know who else was there that we didn't know? My husband, Brent Sipley, was there.
Really?
He was there, and he knew of me through Charlie Raymond, one of his buddies that's the head of the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization. And he had been trying to get Brent and I to say hi, meet, and only because we were both in this sort of weird world of crypto and UFO, not because I was married at the time and I had no intention of going anyplace or meeting anybody. But he said he saw me. He was there with his daughter. He saw me and Micah and Amy. And he said that Micah and I were in the midst of conversing with people and trying to get some communications and interviews. So he didn't come up and say hi, even though he knew who I was, which is sort of creepy in a way.
Oh, you're out there. I mean,
it's so weird and creepy that you can be in the same spot with somebody who knows who you are, yet doesn't have the balls to come up and say hi. So that was sort of strange. And now I'm married.
And now you're married.
There you go. It all worked out in the end.
I didn't.
It doesn't matter how you got there.
I didn't even meet him officially for a year and a half. We didn't even meet till a year and a half later. So that was sort of cool. But short story, wild. So, yeah.
Nice. See, those conferences sound so much more exciting than UFO conferences. I feel like
usually smaller.
Yeah.
They're usually a lot
rowdy.
Smaller. And they have people who are just a very wide range of personalities. And, a lot of these people are very worldly when it comes to outdoorsmen or, just professionals of all different communities. But it was definitely different. We interviewed a few people who I thought might have been intoxicated or maybe smoking something while they were out there in the field. I when they show me pictures and it's like a blob monster, I think we saw a few of those, and you still have to listen. It's like the UFO world. You don't know what you're hearing. You've got to listen. You have to pay attention. You have to give them the chance to explain the situation. And even though there's like a hint of doubt in the back of your mind, you still have to go through the process, and then you can ask the questions and try to get to some answers. And then sometimes you don't get any further than that. But when you're talking about Bigfoot and cryptids, there's a lot of fear because you don't know what they are. You don't know what they're capable of. And we don't know what's out there, just like in the skies or in our ocean. There's still lots of land that hasn't been touched by man that is maybe inhabited by monstrous creatures who could rip your limbs off in a second if they got angry. And so hearing the stories from them was entertaining and very informative. It was a totally different world for us, and we had some fun too.
That's cool.
The Outbest Creative. That's very sweet, Tiffany, about your story. I guess you and Brent.
Oh yeah.
Can't wait for the movie adaptation with Tom Hanks and a younger Meg Ryan.
Hey, there you go.
He is older than me.
That's always a fun game. Who would play you in a movie? I always love doing that.
Yeah.
I would be played by a ghost, I think. I'm so sorry, guys. I look sickly right now with this lighting. My apologies to your viewers.
Have you been outside, Marshmallow Man?
Yeah, actually. I will tell you, I got heat. What do you call it? Not heat stroke. I got like
heat poisoning, like sun poisoning.
Yeah, sun poisoning yesterday. I went outside for like 3 hours running, which was so stupid. I was like, I gotta get that summer bod, and no. Now my whole body is beet red, and I slept.
Usually
for
that's what happens when vampires get out of their coffins.
Exactly, man. Poof into smoke. I wish that would have been better than this. I can't move any of my limbs right now, but that's a story for another day. That's not why we're here.
Are you sure?
Why are we?
Why we're here?
Yeah, why are we? Oh, look at that. He printed it out.
Haven't we had enough of those? And
do you
know
why? Because we're old people and we have to print stuff out, because otherwise I can't read it.
Now, Sweet Tea, I resemble that remark. You're treading on eggshells here, all right? So you can just nip that right in the bud.
You are not old.
Look here. Exhibit A. Look at this.
Oh, you cannot outdo me. Look at this.
What the hell's
Look
going
at this. Not to be outdone, Sweet Tea has to produce her prescription. Are those prescription glasses, by the way?
Oh, hell no.
Everywhere for
These are prescription glasses. I finally, I had to go ahead and do it because I was doing exactly what you guys are doing. I was printing everything out, and I still do that from time to time because I'll tell you, look, the blue light from the retina burning monster staring at the screen all day, even with glasses, and these, of course, have the blue light blocking.
Mine too. Yes, love that.
Guys, it's not good for your eyes. So yeah, read a book, kids. Seriously, like an old-fashioned book, although it doesn't help save trees, but try and get them on recycled paper. That's meeting in the middle, right?
Yeah,
I don't think I can. Can you purchase recycled pages for certain books?
Well,
see.
You can, but you can also print documents like that on recycled paper. Did you guys, Kevin? You printed that on recycled paper, didn't you, bro?
Yes, that's the story.
Good answer,
my man.
Yeah. All right, so
I was about to sign off.
we cut. Well, we did bring Ryan and Micah, and then Sean will be on in a little bit to talk about this report, the UAP report that dropped Friday. Conveniently, Friday, at about 6 p.m. 6 Eastern,
well, it was
something like that.
4:30 Eastern.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, was it officially went okay? So late in the day on a Friday, when our community, the UFO, paranormal UFO community was, on bated breath waiting for it. But mainstream media and stuff, some of those people were like done for the day, so it probably didn't get the full attention nationally that it should, and maybe that was by design, but
100%. I sorry.
Yeah. This 9-page report. Yeah, this 9-page report, which after you get past, I guess, index and some other things, it's basically a 4-page report. Ryan, your takeaway.
So, and I can't believe I haven't even talked to Micah about it yet. That's crazy. I was listening to his episode earlier about it, and it brought back some memories of the first time I saw it. So I was very let down, of course, the first time I read it. It's like when you go through, you got interviewed for something in a book and you're going through the book just looking for your name and you don't find it. For me, it was, where's the photos? Where's the videos? I want to know what the Tic Tac was. Nothing. We got no specific cases, which I'm sure Micah can expound on. But for me, there were some nuggets in there, which I'm sure we can talk about. But overall, I was let down until I went back and reread it like 2 or 3 more times. Same. And every time I read it, I was like, there's actually more here that they're admitting, not that it's alien, not that it's, this, that, but that they don't know what they're dealing with.
They're
and they don't
admitting
have
that
the
they don't
resources.
know. Yes,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was surprised by the amount of unsolved cases they had. I think
Yeah.
they
There
said
was 144 unknowns and one confirmed air balloon.
one. That
Right.
was crazy to me. I couldn't believe
And just
that.
even that 144 number out of going back 100 years or 70 years, they decided that those 144 were mysterious and
Well,
that's awesome.
They only went back to 2004.
Yeah,
right?
2004. But
To
I
the
mean,
Nimitz, yeah.
yeah, but looking at 144, they were talking about having seen 2, 3, 4, 5 a week on a regular basis for extended periods of time. And just admitting, and that this wasn't in the report, I'm talking about different interviews with Sean and other people, but the idea that there are 2, 3, 4 unidentified aerial phenomenon that are being seen a day is a little bit overwhelming when it comes down to it.
In training areas, nonetheless.
Right.
Which
Yes.
means that a lot of these incidents seem to be monitoring the areas, in my personal opinion. If you have that many training exercises going on with aerial phenomena happening, like they know those training exercises are happening. At least that's a assumption I'm making. But
When you say that, I get that, but also think about all of the stuff, all of the UAPs that are not located around those sites. They're not just interested in those sites. They're all over.
right.
It's not, that's just where they have a lot more ways of identifying things that are above them, around them, coming out of the water. That's just because they have a lot of monitoring devices in those areas. I still think that there's a plethora of stuff going on all over the seas, all over the earth, that are not being caught. So it's not just like, well, there's only this area where they are being located. It's not.
Micah,
Yeah.
What kind of stuff you got for us?
Well, there's an awful lot to say. Let me just, express that. But, let's, try to go with the ones that really stick out the most and work our way down. Really, some of the significant takeaways to me really had been, for instance, statements by the authors of the report talking about how, for instance, the U.S. Air Force didn't have a deep history with this phenomenon. Now, there's that old expression, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. And the fact that the reports, now keep in mind, they said 2004 to the present, but of course, what do we know that happened in 2004? The Nimitz incident, that was a highly significant and also a culturally impactful incident. And so my suspicion is based in part on the fact that the authors of the report also state that, most of what we looked at really occurred in the last 2 years. And this on account of the fact that the Navy and then thereafter the Air Force had established new formal reporting systems within the last 2 years. The majority of what we see in this report actually is extremely recent stuff. Now, I don't know that necessarily indicates an uptick in UFO sightings as some in the media have reported this. If anything, really, we can go back to other periods in history where we probably actually have more significant numbers of UFO sightings being reported in years like 1966, 1973, and others. But my takeaway really is that the authors of the report didn't look any further back than 2004. That's probably as far back as they went because that's when the Nimitz thing happened. Most of what we're dealing with is in with the last 2 years. They say the Air Force doesn't have a significant history, but let's talk about Project Blue Book, okay? Let's talk about Project Grudge and Project Sign before that. Blue Book, by around 1952, had accumulated more than 3,000 sightings, okay? And that according to a memorandum that Ryan and I have talked about on his program that was sent by Howard Cross, I believe, to some of the folks who were thereafter going to convene a CIA-sponsored scientific panel, thereafter known as the Robertson Panel. And then by the time 1968 rolls around, right before Blue Book closes, they collected some 12,000 sightings. Now, a distinctive minority, around 600, were deemed to be actual bona fide unexplainables. And that still doesn't say, therefore, aliens, but it definitely does leave us with a residuum of cases that can't be explained. for the authors of the report to say the Air Force hasn't got a very deep history with this, I mean, I'm asking myself, how deep does history go? 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years, because they're not taking into account what happened roughly half a century ago. Now, another thing that stands out to me about this report that's rather interesting, the FAA has consistently told journalists like Ryan and I, when we've inquired, that they don't have any involvement with UFO reporting. They've stated at their website categorically that if you are a pilot, and Tiffany, you'll be able to, I think, relate to this, having
Right, because I'm a pilot.
Yeah, your husband actually having seen a UFO.
Pillow talk, Tiffany. Pillow talk.
Again, a pilot like Brent would be told, don't contact the FAA, contact the National UFO Reporting Center. In the past, they were also told to contact NIDS, the National Institute of Discovery Science, and then thereafter, the Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Studies Organization. Now,
honestly, they were told not to report anything.
Right.
They often were told not to report anything. They were also advised to contact local law enforcement if they thought it was a severe enough issue. But the point is, the FAA didn't want UFO reports, and yet our UAP Task Force report that dropped on Friday says that the FAA does indeed collect some information. Now, our colleague Jason McClellan had pointed out on Twitter that it's likely that this is probably just in routine reporting. If an anomaly is reported and a pilot requests information on, is there traffic at this altitude? Have we got something? Some of that information may be passed along thereafter to an organization since the formal establishment of reporting. But again, as recently as this year, I've been in conjunction, actually, as recently as today, I've been communicating with the FAA on this very issue. And they have told me rather flatly, we'll get back with you. And I hope that they do. But usually it takes 3 or 4 extra emails. But I appreciate the folks at the FAA who have gotten back with me. And I'm hoping to get some clarification on why they've told people for decades, not to report UFOs. We don't collect that information, but we do send information along to the Navy's UAP task force. Mm-hmm. That's another thing. We could go on down the list, but really I think the most significant thing perhaps is how often the T word, threat, appears in this report. I think a lot of people probably came away from this report with certain concerns about the, heavy usage of that term. But I mean, again, we also have to recognize what our military does, and I'm sure Sean Cahill, when he jumps on with us, can talk to this point. What our military does is they protect us. They are assessing potential threats. And although it's not explicitly stated, I think the reiteration of the terminology threat, having to do with threat assessment of an unknown, an unfamiliar apparent technology. And like you guys mentioned, 144 cases that were examined, only one was conclusively identified. They don't rule out foreign technologies, China, Russia, non-state actors. And of course, although it's never explicitly said, they don't rule out more exotic sources either. But fundamentally, what we're dealing with is an unknown. And I think it's also something that is quite evidently a technology that can't be identified. And hence, in my opinion, why in addition to threat assessment in relation to that apparent technology, literally minutes after this report drops online, we have senators chiming in. We had Adam Schiff, we had Marco Rubio, Mark Warner, all issuing statements on their website. We had the Department of Defense issuing a press statement. We had Kathleen Hicks, Deputy Secretary of Defense, who had also issued a memorandum which was discussing the furtherance of the UAP task force and its operations in the years to come. We even had NASA issue a new fact page describing UAP studies, even though they said that they didn't have any evidence of them, but they said if they were ever discovered, this may be a new question for science, which, interestingly, of course, the UAP task force report itself said 2 things about that threat potential, that these do pose a potential threat to aviators, but they also may represent a challenge, in their own terminology, to national security. So in my opinion, those are the big takeaways, and it really gives us an awful lot to stew on as we see the continuation in the years ahead of the UAP task force, its mission, and what they again, presumably are going to continue to try and collect information on and also document and study.
This is sort of something that I was thinking about over the past few days. I'm wondering how, and I haven't really looked it up yet, but I'm wondering how the other big powers of our planet are going to take this report. Do you think they're going to put out new reports of their own? Do you think that that's going to potentially happen?
Let me add to that, because my thing, Tiffany, would be a caveat to that is, wouldn't China, Russia stay quiet and just say, let's let them think we got this?
It's us.
I mean, just to kind of,
this is, I feel like it's a game. It's a game. I honestly think that this was the intelligence agency's way of appeasing what was requested of them. This report literally did exactly what was requested and nothing more. They were not going to do anything more than that. And I think what the assessment actually really showed was, sorry, we didn't have enough resources. We didn't have enough time. And if we really want to get to the bottom of this, we need more money. And I'm not saying fund some big budget defense program. I'm not saying that. A lot of people have been throwing that around. This is all to get money to increase the military budget. I don't necessarily believe that. This response by the Department of Defense sounded more like, yeah, we think we're going to pick up what the task force did because they were tasked with something. They did it. And now we're going to continue to, like you said, roll the snowball down the hill and see what catches. So I'm happy with that memo way more than I am with this stupid report, to be completely honest.
There's going to be a price tag, though. There's going to be a price tag movement. Yeah. And is this officially the reboot of Project Blue Book, whatever they'll call it next? Will there be a lead guy in a Hynek role, if you will, to take the reins? And
Avi Loeb.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think a lot of scientists would want to position themselves in that role. Now, let's not forget,
not Neil deGrasse Tyson, though.
Not Neil deGrasse Tyson. Again, I'm a little burnt out with Neil. I like Neil. I've always enjoyed Neil. I think he's a great entertainer as well as a scientist, and importantly, significantly, he's a science educator. We need a lot of those these days. Sure. But Neil fails to impress me in terms of, and I say this respectfully, he fails to impress me with his what appears to be a certain reticence. You can barely pick up on it, but you may notice if you really watch that he doesn't seem to be very impressed with these Navy videos or any of the information forthcoming. Nothing in the report. Again, he keeps saying, every time there's a video, he says, "Show me better video." Now, look, again, a listener of my program wrote in recently and said, "Think about that picture of the black hole, okay, that came out a few years ago or a couple of years ago." Now, you got to keep in mind also, it's not an actual picture. It's not a photograph. It's not an image of a black hole. There is no such thing. What this is the accumulation of massive amounts of data that were used to create a visual representation of our detection of a black hole. And of course, physicists were incredibly excited about this because it is further confirmation, not only of Einstein's theories with relation to relativity, but also, of course, what they have put their effort and their time and their lives and their livelihood into for years. Seth Shostak, again, I have to admire a guy who has spent years and who is actually paid to seriously look for aliens. But it pains me to think that he, and again, Dr. Tyson and others, who have had this question just like the rest of us for so long. And again, yes, like Ryan has said, we should very carefully, maneuver around the issue of UAP. We shouldn't unequivocally say that this is alien and could be nothing else. It must be that. No, we don't know what UAP represents. But if it did represent extraterrestrials, I could imagine nothing more tragic than great scientists who have these questions and who are more qualified to answer these kinds of questions and to discern this kind of information than anybody else. And they are unwilling to look at the data because they are looking through telescopes, or they are looking at, data that's being doled out by computer systems and producing representations of things that the human eye can't actually see. And yet, paradoxically, they are going to say that these Navy videos are too fuzzy and don't look good enough. Guys, that's a double standard if I ever heard one. So again, all I'm asking is, I think it's incumbent upon scientists to seriously weigh the possibilities, make no conclusions. Of course, it's difficult to draw any conclusions right now with the data that we have, but let's at least analyze this. And again, Hynek initially came from that position of skepticism and came around to eventually becoming one of the leading advocates, maybe a Neil deGrasse Tyson. Maybe there's still hope, maybe may the force be with him. But, one of these guys could certainly actually have an about face like Hynek did. But we are going to need, Kevin, to your point, to get scientists more involved in this in the years ahead.
One thing that was mentioned in the report, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, and you all would know the exact comments. It's referenced that, pilots, credible people actually seen these things. So take the fuzzy pictures, take the, not so clear image. You've got credible people sharing.
And they're trained observers.
And I'm sure probably some of those, I don't know if they were sworn testimony. I don't know if they actually spoke at a level where they had to be sworn in, whatever. But they did, I've heard Fravor and several have talked to high-ranking officials. So, I mean, I don't know. As an enthusiast, the report gave me exactly what I thought it would. But but there is this ongoing narrative at that level that's got to be, that's going to happen.
Well, and I think too, we should keep in mind the that big section in there actually about the stigma and the ridicule that this is now like protocol that they must report these things, and they don't care how you do it. If it's on a military camera, do it. If it's on your cell phone, do it. Like, we need to know if this is a threat. So please, no longer think of this as flying saucers, little green men. Like, if it is something you cannot identify, we want to know about it. And Micah, how many military people have we talked to where they come forward 20 years later and report this to us and say, oh, I felt so good to get that off my chest. And I'm like, that's great for you. I'm glad you have that closure finally. But we really could have used that data 20 years ago to get to this mystery a little more. So I think this is really cool that they're saying we need to stop thinking this is all BS. There's something going on. We don't have an explanation for it. And report it within 2 weeks. That was the other big thing I took out of that DOD memo was, don't wait 2 years after you're out of the military. Like, we want to know within 2 weeks, or you could get in trouble in some ways. So I thought that was pretty telling too. I think there's some fire being put under these people's feet to report these things, which is great in my opinion.
Ryan, you've done a lot of work with experiencers of this phenomenon, and also the investigation into visitations and abductions and however you want to discuss that aspect of this. What do you think the impact on humanity from a personal level of experiencers of multiple phenomenon, whether it's the UFO itself, seeing if there's people coming out or around, or absolutely abductions related to these UFOs, UAPs? Do you think that they're ever going to look into that aspect of this seriously?
That is such a good question. I've had that conversation with a few people recently, primarily Alan B. Smith over at Paranormal Now. He asked me, like, do you think we'll ever get to the point where close encounters and please excuse the subway in the background there, close encounters and abductions, will this be part of the conversation? And I think, in time, it could take years, it could take decades, but I think right now we're living in acknowledgement of the phenomena by the US government. Not to say that hasn't happened before, but I think it is more mainstream right now. And we have so many more ways to get that information out to people. Look, when Blue Book was around, there was no internet. So it was very easy to contain the information. Mm-hmm. And now you have people like George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, The Debrief, coming out with things that I seriously doubt the Pentagon Task Force wants them to be coming out with. So I think we live in an age where it's becoming very hard to contain, if you want to call it a cover-up. I don't know if I would go that far, but to contain the information that they're trying to contain on this topic. So I think within time, Tiffany, we'll get there. It's going to be hard and awkward and messy, but I think maybe 30, 40 years down the line, we'll be like, okay, we've accepted that some of these are legitimate phenomena from elsewhere, whether that means alien, interdimensional, I don't know. But once we tackle that with all of our scientists, then what? What do we do with these thousands of cases of people who've touched a craft, who have had things downloaded into their brain, or have claimed to have been abducted? I think in time, and I'm sorry for the experiencers who are living in this age right now that maybe not in your lifetime, but your kids and your kids after that might be having congressional hearings about their alien abduction. I don't know. It's a huge hypothetical, but I think in time, for sure.
As long as they don't start abducting kids to get to that aspect.
Yeah.
And, there's a problem when it comes to experiencers that it ends up to be a generational problem.
Right.
They sort of are followed by this for their throughout their family line. And, I'm no exception to that. And the idea of someone coming to my home and pulling us aside and saying, I need to know what you know, or I need to know what your daughter knows. I'll need to know about your experience. And I don't know how that part of it would happen, but it is somewhat of a fear of mine that, they may just take your information and silence you forever if that's a possibility. It's a little scary, that aspect. We've got the UAPs that they've said, okay, they're real. We don't know what it is. The next step is how it's affecting humans on a daily basis and around the world, not just here, not just, not just military. This is happening all over. So that's a little bit of a conundrum.
It is. Yeah. It's a hard conversation to have too. Because again, we're living in the age of just acknowledgement. I don't think this is confirmation. I don't think this is disclosure, but it's a step. And I think look, if you want to call it
partial disclosure,
it's a process, and it's very gradual. So I think, we should be happy with what we get, I guess is a way to put it. I think it's a good baby step in a journey that probably will outlive all of us. But I'm glad to be part of like that first paradigm shift, as it were, I guess.
These 9 pages that dropped Friday, the UAP report, is unclassified. Have you all, through your sources, your meets and greets in the dark alleys or the bad corners in the bad part of town, have you come up with anything that was in the classified report?
I think that Ryan and I, of course, naturally have not been made privy to any kind of classified information. I mean, I don't want to speak for Ryan. I know I haven't been. But I think that
that's very dangerous.
Yeah, right. But I think that there are certain aspects.
Rumors then.
There are rumors. There have been rumors.
There's always rumors.
I mean, for instance, Ryan had actually been approached by one of his former guests on his program. I hope I'm not spilling the beans here, Ryan. I think you've talked about this, though, on your show, and you and I've certainly talked about it. One of his guests that approached him and said, hey, there was a widely circulated photograph in intelligence circles, going back a couple of years ago, that appears to depict a triangular craft of some sort, what appears to be a craft, presumably exiting the ocean that was photographed, I believe, by an F-18 pilot. Sources who had spoken with the debrief, the debrief, of course, being the media organization that I co-founded, and which Ryan, of course, is a contributor to. But we had actually confirmed through sources of ours that indeed this photograph had been circulated. By the time the debrief team had confirmed that information, we knew of that. I didn't know that Ryan had been told essentially something very similar, and he and I later comparing notes, he says, of course, I've heard about this as well. A lot of people, in fact, had heard about it, which is strongly suggestive of, and in fact, this may have been confirmed at some point, that it's in likelihood an unclassified photograph, probably for special use only, which is the same sort of classification that the 3 Navy videos, which were previously unauthorized for release but were leaked, and then thereafter, of course, in early 2020, they were officially released by the DoD in an effort to try and clarify some questions about those. In my opinion, there may still be some questions, but the point is that, again, I think that there's probably a lot of visual information. In fact, we must know that there is, because not once, but now at least on a couple of occasions, former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe has gone on television, and he has talked about, satellite imagery and other data which seems to support the reality of UAP and in a visual capacity. Now, of course, again, it's not shown in the report. And in fact, another significant takeaway about the report, Kevin, that you're talking about, we got 144 incidents that are outlined in the report, 145 really, if we account for the one, that was easily explained there that you mentioned there, Tiffany. But the there are no actual specifics provided by any of the actual individual cases. But what we do know is, and I can cite two instances, for instance, that the debrief has reported on that to me are suggestive of incidents that were likely examined by the UAP task force in this report. And again, that's a likelihood. I can, of course, not confirm that myself, but it seems likely. There were photographs that in December of last year, the debrief reported on. We had not actually obtained those photographs first. They had appeared online beforehand. After we reported on those photographs, they were subsequently reported on by Mystery Wire. George Knapp, of course, a veteran journalist, great guy. He also seemed to have confirmed details about these photographs and had had them in his possession, had known about those probably around the time that we had reported on them, but he reported subsequently and additional photos which documented an object which he said some had referred to as an acorn. Now, there had been some speculation that this was indeed just a Batman balloon, and I wouldn't rule out that possibility. Literally a Party City balloon depicting the DC Comics superhero character Batman. But the thing about that I think is interesting is that one of the details that is discussed in as far as characteristics of the actual UAP in the 9-page report, brief though it was, it does describe objects that were seemingly able to remain stationary against winds, sometimes moving into the wind, which was suggestive of them not being balloons. Those same sorts of characteristics were apparently conveyed about this object, which we had, of course, released the photographs. Knapp had done further reporting on that. And in my opinion, one way we could interpret this is that, of course, this had in fact been one of the instances that they had been looking at. And in fact, of course, I mean, I think it had actually been confirmed that the UAP task force had likely been looking at this photograph. Now, more recently, of course, one of the pieces of footage that had been dropped, this associated with the USS Omaha, a piece of footage that was dropped by Jeremy Corbell, the filmmaker, and who Ryan and I think met for the first time together back in 2013. But Jeremy, of course, has been making a lot of headway in recent days with the videos that he's been releasing. In fact, I think really like within the last 2 hours, he just dropped another one online. It's fairly indistinct what appears in the video, but nonetheless, there are some lights in the sky, and it's keeping people talking. But I mean, I think
welcome to ufology.
Yeah, but see, the problem is, of course, and I'm sure Jeremy would, of course, probably agree with this point. None of the objects in these videos are displaying really these 5 observables that, many like Sean Cahill, Lou Elizondo, and others have spoken about. We're not really seeing all that in these videos. These videos show something, but they leave an awful lot open to the imagination. But now the footage that was released in relation to the USS Omaha that shows a black object in infrared moving and then it descends down into the ocean. The debrief actually, shortly after Jeremy dropped that video, we reached out to the Pentagon. We'd been actually independently researching the Omaha incident and had been writing an article. We reached out to the Pentagon, and Pentagon spokeswoman Susan Goff confirmed for us that video was indeed not only something that the Navy had obtained, but according to what MJ Banias, our editor-in-chief, had asked her about, and her responses, she appeared to convey, and I always try to be very careful in how I word this, she appeared to convey that this had also been something the UAP task force was looking at. So, again, with all precaution necessary, I would say that those are probably a couple of instances of visual material that were obtained by the Navy or other military bodies, which the UAP task force was looking at. So to answer your question there, Kevin, we do have a couple of instances where we can kind of triangulate some of the information that the UAP task force was analyzing in their report. Obviously, there are going to be dozens of others that we may never know about because that, if it's not classified, it hasn't been released into the public. But we certainly have an idea, at least, about some of the instances.
We have a question from one of the listeners. Let me put that up there.
One of our friends, remember?
Friends. The Outcast Creative says, does the panel feel we're perhaps being slowly conditioned for a release of more hard-hitting information down the road, already known to those in charge, so that when it happens, it's less of a shock?
Very possible.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. If anyone has been following Luis Elizondo, the former head of ATIP, he was asked recently, how would humanity react if they knew what you were privy to? And his answer was a little surprising. He said somber. He said it would dramatically change everything overnight. we would wrestle with everything we've ever known, and we'd make it through, but it's not going to be easy. So I do think they know something, but I'm never one to go as far as saying, they've got 10 alien bodies underground somewhere. They've known for 70 years that this is happening. I haven't done enough research to comfortably say that.
You haven't?
Well, no, I'm okay admitting that, man, for sure. If that makes me a bad ufologist, so be it. But
well, when it comes down to having
something,
when it comes down to having any type of off-world craft that may have crashed or been brought down, it would take a while to figure out what they really have, what they're looking at. How long,
just because they have it doesn't mean they know what it is, Tiffany. You're so right.
Or we may not have the ability to control, or this is only conjecture. This is what I believe. It may take 30, 50, 75 years for them to figure out what the hell controls it, how we can reproduce it. So, I mean, it may be still very confusing, even at that level. Just because they may have crashed vehicles doesn't mean that they know how to reproduce and fly.
That's still Bob Lazar's narrative right now.
Well, okay, Bob Lazar. Yeah, we can talk about that. That's got a lot of implications.
He said they couldn't figure it out, and he believes they still haven't. If you buy into Bob Lazar's claims,
it may be something that
we may never know.
Our bodies may not physically be able. There may be something that only those individuals who were able to fly it are. Maybe we don't have the right equipment.
Well, to that point, right now, Elon Musk is exploring possibilities that are very much in line with what, some transhumanists and certain, singularitarians have been proposing for years, guys like Ray Kurzweil and others, the idea of brain-computer interfaces and things along these lines. There have been recent ideas and conjectures, that have been raised. Increasingly, we've seen frequent contributions regarding UAP appearing in publications like Scientific American. So I think that in addition to the government disclosing, and I do think this is disclosure, by the way, I don't even call this, some form of disclosure. I think this is disclosure, but let me just be very clear about this. I think that there is the reality of disclosure, government coming out and saying, well, we're not going to give you what we have and what we've been collecting, but, here's some information because this is obviously of public interest and there's obviously a lot of interest in this. And of course, we've got politicians, and lawmakers who are saying, we need to produce a report for them. So we're going to do that. And to Ryan's earlier point, we're going to do exactly what you asked us to do. And we're going to keep that within as narrow a kind of focus as we possibly can to meet those criteria without overstepping our bounds. Again, Gideon Lewis Krauss, who wrote the very lengthy and very well-written article for the New Yorker a while back, had mentioned during interviews that folks that he spoke with, no doubt in association with the UAP task force or perhaps its predecessors like ATIP, they seemed to convey to him that they weren't very happy about what John Ratcliffe had gone on television and said, not once, but twice at least, maybe more times, talking about satellite imagery and other kinds of sensory data. And this UAP task force certainly did seem to confirm the idea that multiple sensor data was obtained in a number of instances that they looked at with regard to these UAP, which seemingly conveys, along with visual observations, that there is indeed a there. Now, the thing is, and I think this is really important to remember, that they are releasing some information, that they are more importantly acknowledging that they collect this information, and significantly that they intend to continue to do so in an effort to assess an unknown. It's not the kind of disclosure everybody had hoped for. It's not. But it is nonetheless, I think, a disclosure of government's involvement, intentions, and at least a certain degree of data that they've collected. But the problem with the idea of disclosure really has, to me, in my view, a lot to do with the way that we project onto that what we hope disclosure is going to be. Ryan may hope that they're going to give us information about these triangle crafts, because I know that he doesn't know anything about those and never researches that topic ever, do you? And then
never.
Why? I'm a blank slate on that one, friend. But I may be hoping that they're going to release all the MIB data. You know, Tiffany may be hoping that they're going to give us everything about, you know, contact experiences. You know, Kevin, he's hoping that they're going to tell us if indeed the Pewamians are as beautiful as the contactees over the decades have said that they are.
Swipe right.
But I mean, you know, but the thing is, at the end of the day, everyone's going to project onto this their expectations. And I think in a large part, that's why the result of the report coming out, everybody's just kind of like, what was that? You know, well, of course they didn't, you know, show their cards. They kept them pretty close to the chest, you know, but I mean, they gave us an indication, albeit through a poker face, of what they were playing with. We know that they had some information that they've collected, at least going back to 2004. I suspect the majority was just from the last 2 years, but they're looking into it. Guys, that may be the best we're going to get, and we may have to face a new kind of reality. That reality may not be the confirmed existence of extraterrestrials visiting Earth, at least in terms of government knowledge of it. This may not be confirmation of, you know, secret deals going all the way back to the Eisenhower administration. This may not be confirmation of everything that you never wanted to ever believe in, that you saw in the MJ12 papers, in which skeptics told you wasn't real, and actually I don't think a lot of it was either. No, what this may be is an even more frightening potential reality, that civilian UFO researchers may have actually collected as much, and in some spheres and spaces, maybe even more data on this topic than government has. Now, obviously, government has been collecting information. You know, the DoD, various branches of the government, you know, National Geospatial Intelligence, you know, I mean, the FBI, those who had actually been listed in the appendix at the end of the report who had been contributors. The Navy, the U.S. Air Force. I mean, obviously, these branches of the government are collecting information, and they're going to have certain things based on the equipment at their disposal that we don't have. But at the end of the day, there may still be certainly areas of this broader UAP study that civilians have collected more information about, because government may look at this and say, there doesn't appear to be any threat there. There doesn't appear to be any kind of an interest there. There doesn't appear to be any kind of a technological capability worth exploiting there. We could go down the list. If it's not going to be of interest within the confines of the kinds of things that government will look at, why would they analyze that? And many scientists would say, well, this all sounds like nonsense, so we won't look at it either. So indeed, the civilian sphere may actually have accumulated untold amounts of data in certain areas of the broader study of UAP that government either has no interest in or sees no benefit from studying. And we need to remember that what we're seeing from them only has to do with the areas that they see fit for study in the interest of national security.
Okay, so I've got to bring this up. You know, we talk about not knowing what they are, not knowing where they're from, not knowing when they're from. And I wanted to bring up a book, and I know you and I have talked about this before.
Oh, yeah. Very interesting. I see where you're going with this.
So this book, I don't know if anybody's ever seen it before, read
Show
it.
again, Tiffany.
Freaking awesome book, Jeff Long, The Descent.
Okay.
And it talks about how we absolutely have an accidental contact with these people that are called Hadals, homoidalis, from the inner earth, and how they've had this civilization and they're sort of defunct, but they still are in existence, and we run into them as we're drilling and trying to take over the inner earth as, you know, a form of the next frontier. Well, you know, when it comes down to it, we don't know. We've heard of these types of beings, these types of inner earth civilizations. You talk about, this is ridiculous. I don't even know why I'm bringing it up, but Jimmy Church likes to talk about, he's like, oh, Gobekli Tepe, you know, and I'm like, okay, that's not cool. But there is a place.
Jimmy Church voice.
But there is a place in Turkey, and I, God dang it, I just forgot the name. Where is it?
Anatolia?
Not Anatolia. It's an inner civilization that went under. Gosh, what is the name? Gosh. But anyways, the whole point is they had enough areas that were carved out of the earth in order to house up to 10,000, 15,000 human beings. Now, why would they go under the ground? They still don't know why, but it's showing that humanity has gone underground for certain reasons throughout our history. And, we are finding these, we were finding these as much as we like to explore. The archaeologists are finding these and lots of other explorers. And I do feel we may have civilizations under our water. We don't have a clue what is going on in the deep oceans. We have no idea. But a lot of these ships have been seeing USOs, these craft that are coming from the water and going out into wherever they want to go. And this goes back to my first sighting back in 2013, 14, 15. I can't even remember. It had to have been right around then. I do remember it was in October. It was in Destin, Florida. I was sitting on my balcony at 10 p.m. watching the full moon rise over the Gulf of New Mexico. And I had this strange light that came up, and it was directly above, and it came directly down, straight down, brightest light I've ever seen. And it went under. It wasn't massive. It was just this bright light that went under the water, and I could see the brightness of it right under the water, and then it just vanished. It didn't even look like it disturbed the water. The water was still crystal clear and smooth as glass, and it was the most amazing thing that I had seen up until that point. As a UFO. Now I've seen others beyond that now, but that was one that shocked me. And I had never even heard of a USO. I'd never heard of the idea behind these crafts that go from ocean to sky and sky to ocean and vice versa. I had not heard of this. So the idea of not knowing where these craft are coming from, where are the inhabitants or the operators as well? That's how I think. And that's because I'm a person and I drive a car, and that's how I feel. You may see my car and I fly by you at 150, but where is she from? That's a good question. Where is she going? That's
right.
how I relate.
No, that's a really great. I think it's a brilliant comparison you make there. Pulling up Jeff Long's book, and naturally, I like that book. In fact, I think I recommended that to you.
You did, yes.
The premise is very interesting. The author Mac Tonnies, who passed away unfortunately just a few years ago. He had written an interesting book that the manuscript had been completed right before he passed away, and it was a short book, but it was called The Cryptoterrestrials. And in this book, Tony's had essentially kind of in a Vallean kind of sense, he was obviously very influenced by Jacques Vallée, and he liked the idea of being able to present an idea without necessarily endorsing it or believing it. And so he said, just as a matter of pure speculation, what if, there were some sort of a presence here on Earth that could somehow have remained hidden from us? Now, of course, in the sphere of ufology, we think of this in terms of, with this UAP task force, although it wasn't explicitly stated in the report, some of Tim McMillan, my colleagues reporting there at the debrief, and others, they seem to continue to get information from people, who have been briefed and who also have, certain knowledge with relation to what the studies of the UAP task force entailed. And some of it had to do with these so-called transmedium craft, objects that are capable of, moving through air as easily as moving through water. And so again, it's not flight as we know it. These appear to be aircraft that are capable of doing something. They can move through the air, but they can also travel underwater. And that's nothing new. Many act like this is a brand new development, but in fact, yet again, going all the way back to Blue Book, there were a number of Blue Book reports that involved sightings around water. In fact, maybe a
lot of them from Catalina Island area off California.
Yep, which match the same sorts of general areas where UAP sightings are being reported by our Navy and others right now. We also have to reference in the early 1970s, zoologist Ivan T. Sanderson, who again was really a popular writer, even though he had a scientific background. He was more of a popular writer than anything, and many people today look back on Sanderson's style of science and speculation as being disdainful at very best. Let's say he was very much more on the open-minded side of things, but I actually find a lot of merit to certain writings of his in terms of conversation starters, even if I didn't agree with necessarily all of his conclusions, or maybe even his tendency at times to leave out certain things from what he wrote about, which were, facts that might have tarnished somewhat some of the claims that he was reporting. Not his own claims, but maybe the claims of others that were nonetheless in the furtherance of his premises. And those generally involved a couple of things. He wrote a landmark book back in 1961 entitled Abominable Snowmen Legend Come to Life, which, even though the title, I mentioned this to a lot of people, and they're like, I don't really follow the Yeti and the Abominable Snowman thing. And I'm like, look, anyone who thinks they're interested in Sasquatch and hasn't read that book, you got some reading to do, because the book is about the worldwide phenomenon of alleged relict hominoids of different varieties. And again, a lot of the information I've even gone back through and double fact checked by reading some of the accounts, going back to the primary sources. And again, Sanderson cherry picked a little bit, and some of those are far less convincing than he would have presented them as being, but there's still a residuum of information that's strongly suggestive of some unrecognized species. But more significant to this topic in this conversation, he also wrote a book called Invisible Residents, which was arguably the first popular book that dealt with the very seemingly strange idea at the time, and many people still think it's wacky. Yeah, indeed. He was saying UFOs are often seen coming out of oceans, coming out of large bodies of water, lakes, things along these lines. The military's collected information about these. And he was really the first guy to seriously look at this possibility. What if these UFOs, whatever they are, what if they're using our oceans, for concealment? And, it was considered a fairly fringe idea at the time. Who'd have thunk that, by 2020 or so, we would have a, task force under the cognizance of the Department of the Navy that's looking very seriously at that possibility. And they may have indeed, if based on things Ryan and I have heard, they may have collected some photographs that seem to be in the furtherance of this idea that Sanderson really was the first to weigh in on so many decades ago. But now coming back, thing, Tiffany, in regard to the book that you showed there, in Jeff Long's book, The Descent, and this very much in line with Tony's thinking about a crypto-terrestrial civilization, one possible explanation for the UAP is not that it's extraterrestrials who somehow overcame the incredible challenges imposed by interstellar travel. Maybe, and this seems, again, equally, if not more implausible in my opinion, in terms of the range of possibilities, but it's nonetheless a possibility. What if they are actually from here? And what if there is some way of orienting our thinking around this problem that might help us understand this better in terms of looking at this as an Earth-based technology of some kind, not necessarily something from someplace else, which raises a number of other possibilities. But, lastly, Tony's looked at that idea. And again, I would say this about, Sasquatch and other topics that guys like Ivan Sanderson had written about back in the day. However incredible those ideas seem, those who are willing to look will actually find that there is quite a bit of information, anecdotal information primarily, not so much the case as we've recently seen with UAP, but there is quite a bit of information that is suggestive of phenomena that I think science should look at. The problem is most don't think it's credible, or they're worried about what it might do to their reputation if they did look at it seriously. Hence, we still see popular science educators, they're being dismissive of UAP, even when our military is saying we're looking at it, we consider it a potential threat, it's a challenge to national security, and we're going to keep looking at it. And we're going to try and have a more coordinated effort to look at this. Okay, scientists, if you're going to keep your head in the sand, go for it. But it is time we start looking at some of this seemingly implausible, anomalous data, and let's consider the possibility that maybe, like Jeff Long outlined in that book, if we drill deep enough, if we go deep enough, we might actually find something we never expected to find, and it could represent another kind of intelligence. And in the case of that book, that intelligence happens to have come from right here on Earth. It's science fiction, but it's still a great book.
It sort of reminds me of going back to the Dulce Wars and the idea that there are these other entities that we have come in contact with and had little battles with. That I hear that story and think, God, I'm glad that wasn't me. Because it sounds.
Phil Schneider took one for the team here, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, he did. Supposedly. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Don't be a party pooper, Tiffany.
He's gone. I can't talk to him. So, we have a comment from Ufology. UFOs, are they concerned with the impact of their craft on atmospheric and oceanic life forms? What do you think, guys? You think they would be?
I think they could be those life forms, to be honest. I mean, if there's anything to what Micah said, they might have been here long before us, or we also have to take into consideration too. I know I keep bringing up Elizondo. I promise I'm not like an Elizondo super fan. I'm very critical of everything he does as well. But he did say
you up. What does that mean?
Oh yeah, and you hate me, man. You hate me. That they might have been living right next to us all along, and we never knew it. And I love that concept. And you look at the title of that book, Invisible Residents. Could that also mean that they're right next to us and we don't even know it? And whether you want to go interdimensional with that or what have you, like, have fun with that science, because that's way beyond me.
Okay,
but the fact
that brings
maybe
up
these
the cloaking. That brings up the
Exactly.
cloaking ideas of the craft themselves.
Exactly. And we're getting small glimpses into that every time we have these phenomena reach either our dimension or some rift in time. A lot of people think when the atomic bombs went off, that was the ripple that caused all these things to come in here and then zip back out. But again, these are all just wild theories. But I think we need to put those things on the table when we still don't have answers, and our military and government don't have answers either. Like, let's ask the hard questions. That's what I say. And I'm glad people like Avi Loeb are willing to kind of put their reputation on the line to ask those questions, because no other scientists are.
Okay,
Well, Ryan,
we're getting questions
Well, hold on. Let's
from our guest that's coming on.
let's bring someone else to the table. Ryan,
a
I'm going to
lifesaver.
give you the honors because, for the record, Sean Cahill was supposed to be on tonight. Ryan set that up.
Yes.
Either Ryan gave him the wrong link, and maybe I needed to do it myself.
No. Sean did have an emergency, so he does apologize.
It's understood.
But we have Gary Voorhis here with us. Gary saved the day. There's no introduction to give this man. He's way more known than I am, but he was part of the now famous Tic Tac UFO event. He was experiencing it just like Sean was in real time. So I'll let Gary hop in and give us a little origin story of how he got involved with all this. Gary, thank you so much for doing this, brother.
Okay, Gary is on mute. So unmute.
He's on mute.
Yep, unmute yourself.
There he
Thank
is.
you.
So
Trying to be polite.
He's already
and I messed myself
professional.
So
up.
polite.
He mutes himself. So, Gary, thanks for joining us.
In a room of people that everybody knows, I little known compared to you guys. So thank you for the gracious introduction.
Don't forget to see you, bud.
Yeah. As for what was just asked, actually, that's not a bad question. I know some people probably kind of looked at that like, huh, really? Who cares? But really, there's been a lot of evidence. Look at the Rendlesham case where these guys, like, Berool, he's the first vet to get 100% disabled because of just being within proximity of one of these ships. Yeah. So there definitely is a issue of either some type of radiation or something that these things are emitting that are causing issues with, tissue, cancers and growths and all kinds of stuff. And it's not in every situation, but that very well could be the case even with, underwater life.
Gary, do me a favor. Again, Tiffany and I, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. For those who are not aware of who you are, give a little background real quick.
I was a fire controlman in the Navy during the 2004 Nimitz encounter. I ran the Aegis weapon system, including the Spy 1 Bravo radar system and associated consoles that tracked the unknown aircraft for 7 days. And I got to be one of the few people that's actually seen the entire uncompressed, unedited version of the video.
Can you go on record and say how long that video is? There's been so many.
Roughly about 10 minutes. I know it was a heck of a lot longer than what you guys saw, but even 10 minutes. Well, even 10 minutes, you got to remember it's a lot of zoom in, zoom out, a lot of kind of not really very interesting stuff of just them tracking this object doing practically nothing. And then about the only thing you miss is it does do a right-hand turn. You do see a lot more detail on the shape of the object. You can kind of see what Fravor was talking about, where there's something underneath it. Then it does turn to an odd angle in the video, so you get to see a different profile of it. So those are like the things you don't get to see in the small clip that you guys got to see in the public. And of course, it wasn't a compressed garbage that you guys got to witness, but it's better than having nothing, I guess. You did get to see some real key things in that video, like the fact that it's colder than the air around it, and it doesn't seem to have any engines, wings, or propellers or anything, and still is flying. So that's amazing in itself. So I mean, those things like you were talking about with the transmedium flight, due to the characteristics of the way it moved, I don't think it really matters what medium it flies through, shy of solid objects.
Right. Yeah, they don't seem to be able to phase through matter, or do they? But hey, Gary,
that's a good question. Just because you haven't seen it done doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Who knows? Gary, I got a question for you, my man, and it's awful great to see you, by the way. Thanks for jumping on here tonight.
Yes, sir.
This
No
is a
problem.
big surprise for me. You and I haven't talked in maybe more than a year, but when last time you and I chatted about this on my show, you had talked about the Link 16 also. The footage that you are describing, I mean, was this the Raytheon app FLIR, or was this the Link 16, or had there been both?
It was the app FLIR, because we still haven't verified because technically the Link 16 at the time did have the capability to transmit data live, but we're not sure if that particular jet had that upgrade yet. It had existed, but it was still not in every plane. So due to the fact of like trying to find anything out from the military, that's we can't track down even if we had the the actual plane that he flew in, that we don't have access to that type of record, so we never were able to verify whether they had it or not.
While this was going on, were you all able to communicate amongst each other? I know that there were many people who were witness to multiple activities of UAPs. Were you all able to communicate with each other about this, or was this sort of one of those things where silence is golden?
Well, with the exception of the sonar technicians, which I can go into that a little bit more in detail, and I actually have I can amend my story one more time because of a random drunk dial I got from a sonar technician, which is outstanding.
Those are the best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for my drunk message, Tiffany, later.
Well, that's
how we roll.
Well,
Kevin, you are so bad.
Look, y'all, let the man talk. Please go ahead, Gary.
You're killing me here.
Well, we have an entertaining show. If you don't laugh, then we didn't do our job.
No,
there you go.
Well, we were able to talk freely amongst ourselves, but it wasn't like we were all there witnessing it. It wasn't really. Yeah, you had duties to do. You had things to do. You had to make sure that systems were still running. You had watches stand. You still had to eat. You got to remember, getting a good workout in and eating was still just as important as going up and seeing these things off the horizon. I didn't get my mind truly blown until I saw the video, in the last couple of days of this whole encounter. I mean, people seem to forget that the pilots literally only knew about this stuff the last day, last couple of days, and that's it. We had been, these have been our babies for 7 days while we tracked them every which way, and they just been, it's been like pull popcorn. Are they going to do anything? Oh no, they're still just doing 100 knots. Oh, okay. Are we going to do anything about it? In your mind, you're like. And then as a junior personnel, you just kind of keep your mouth shut and just, you talk a little bit amongst each other. But, it's like in a smoke deck, it's like, see that thing? Yeah, saw it. All right. You don't go into detail like you do, like we all do now. It's not as, I guess it's kind of like a conversation between two men over the phone. You busy? No. What do you need? Yep. All right. Let's go. All right. Talk to you later. Done.
Take note of that, Tiffany.
So true.
When you try to prolong a conversation, we just want
Straight to
Yeah.
details. Come on, hurry up. Yeah, I don't do that.
Let me shift gears real quick. Gary, I'm
So let me
glad you're
tell you
here.
a story.
Oh,
No,
go ahead. No,
just the detail.
touche.
Welcome to the 5-hour panel discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The midnight hour. You know,
But-
Kevin Day. Is that who I'm saying? Is that Kevin Day's one of the guys?
Yeah, that's my
operator.
business.
Yeah, he's been. I saw something on social media where he posted basically like, "Look, I told you." He didn't say this. You know, you people. You know,
So you're just making stuff up, Kevin?
No. He went out and just said that he's taken a lot of grief,
Yeah.
ridicule for this.
He's lost jobs. He's had to quit jobs over ridicule.
Yeah.
This guy, for
is
me,
this vindication for you guys?
for him, he was outspoken.
Yeah.
So, he
Yeah.
had a lot. He lost a lot in this
Gotcha.
whole thing. Me, I kind of went in more inclusive. I internalized, and I probably had a lot of relationships that suffered because of that, because of just not being emotionally or mentally available to really commit to any type of thing. It wasn't until some extreme miracle that I met my current wife that brought me out of that shell and brought me back to that person that I used to be. But he was a very solid person before this whole thing happened. He was a by the book sailor. He was very down to earth, very, very confident, very, by all accounts, just a damn good chief and just solid. Now he's not that he's not solid. He's just a whole different person than the person I knew before this thing happened. I've gotten to know him a lot more on a much deeper personal level now than I ever would have as a junior petty officer versus a chief, which is a pretty big jump in rank. So, it's like, your boss's boss's boss talks to you. Yeah, that's basically what it's like. Now it's, we are, co-partners in a company, and we've got a lot more in common now. So he went out and basically said, hey, thanks for nothing, but you kind of owe us an apology. Hey, where's the thanks for suffering for years because of your secrecy? So
Do you feel like there is not alone the stigma is there? It has been for 70 years. Do you feel that some people had a form of PTSD when it came to these experiences before, because it was so mind-shattering, with no one saying a word, or you're not allowed to talk about it? Do you feel like that's sort of going away for people, along with the vindication that has sort of probably helped to a degree over the past few years?
I think the stigma will always slightly remain there, but I think it's become the cool thing to do. So now it's like, oh, I got to see a UFO. I saw a UFO in the service. Now because it's something you can get attention for, and it seems like there's a certain generation on that really, really craves this attention. They need it almost. So now that it's the cool thing to do, you're gonna see a lot more people coming out about it. But then you're gonna still see a lot of guys from my generation. They're going to be like, well, no, I've got a successful business, or I have a GS whatever clearance, and I work for the government, so I am not going to take that chance. I was actually contemplating, blowing up all my old, because I got just about every one of my old shipmates is a friend of mine on Facebook. So I was about to blow up. Where's my 59 guys? What's up? Congress thinks it's cool now. Let's talk about it. But it's hard for me to really pull the trigger on something like that, because I understand how hard it is to come out about it publicly. Luckily for me, I had a mundane job, and I found, once I found out I didn't sign a non-disclosure agreement, I wouldn't sit in jail for talking about it. I just weighed the pros and cons, and as long as everything goes and my family's safe, I'm happy. I'll keep talking about it.
Do you realize, Gary, not to add any more pressure on you, do you realize how important you and your mates are part of this new pop? For me as an enthusiast, it ties into pop culture. I mean, there's always been the alien, the UFO thing, but this is real stuff now.
Yeah. No, it's you got to remember. All joking aside, people like me, Sean, the guy, expats, we take this deadly serious. We don't really consider this a game at all. We study this because we really want to know what these are, what's going on, and seriously think that with all the good, there could still be, there's never anything where you have just all good. You have to remember there's going to be a trade-off somehow. Well, we're interested in knowing, what is that trade-off? If we do find out that there's some type of intelligence behind this, which obviously there are, since they react, so they've deemed that they have some type of intelligence, whether that's artificial or whatever it is, whether these are just probes from another race of beings that can't actually get here on their own, or like you were talking about earlier, it could have been from a prior incarnation of something that evolved on our planet but was already so advanced by the time we started evolving, we had no idea they were here until now. That could have literally been the case. They could have literally destroyed the entire Earth and then it regrew, which we've already proven that there's places on the planet that literally look like there's been nuclear war on this planet at one time. Places in India, places in the Middle East where they find, this type of glass that can only be made in a blast of a nuclear explosion. So there's these weird evidence of these things in the past. What happens if they destroyed the planet and they literally went on? I mean, we have so many movies now where it's like, if we go into nuclear winter, where do we have to go?
Underground.
Bingo. So I mean, we've been here for how many millennia, and we come up with the same solutions that they would have had to do if they destroyed themselves or destroyed the planet. And eventually, because nature has its way of just overcoming whatever, as long as it wasn't completely dead, it's going to bounce back eventually. And we probably can deal with a lot more radiation than they can. Just because we live on a planet that has a radioactive background, and it's even more now than it ever was before we did the first atomic explosions out there in the desert. I mean, our radiation levels are, I think I read the number sometime and I was actually like, oh my God, really? Is it that much more than, 1950? But it is. It's ridiculous because of all of the nuclear explosions that we've had on this planet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gary, can I ask something? So the report. I'm sure we were going to get there, and I don't want to hijack Kevin. This is your show, man. But I'm like dying to ask you. What did you take from it, man? Was this what you expected? Is there anything in there that you have like?
If you look at
that, you were like, okay.
Yeah, well, it's exactly what I thought it was going to be. I had literally said exactly what it was going to be, and it ended up being exactly that. And so,
yeah, I did a panel with Gary like a week before this, and he like almost got it perfect. I was like, yep, he was right.
Well, I worked
Gary's
for him.
The inside guy. Is that what you're saying? Here? Okay.
Well, I was listening to a buddy of mine's podcast, and they're like, "Well, we don't think Gary's a sleeper agent. Nah, he's not that good. So I must be doing a great job if I am." But so it disappointed all of us because we're already immersed in this. We know. We see the empirical evidence. We know all the empirical evidence. We understand that this is a real phenomenon. We are already where this thing is. But you got to remember, everybody that's now calling you about this and talking to you about this that never talked to you about it before, that's what this report was for. In the respect that this report put us into the point where this is a real thing now, that's an amazing thing. So screw all the bad, take the good, and let's keep moving.
Gary, let me throw something at you. This is something that some of my MUFON friends, and I've heard this narrative.
My favorite people.
Yes. I've heard this narrative from a lot of people that, this, what you all witnessed, encountered in 2004 was our technology. 2004 was our technology. That's what they were saying. And they're saying that like recent. I've heard this narrative in the last year to up to now. Now, I've always, in 2004, I could, okay, maybe so. For 2014, maybe so. 2021, could they have freaking kept that a secret for 17 years from you, Fravor, that this was U.S. technology all along, and you all just were part of some kind of a spoof? I mean, really?
Scheme.
Or some agenda that some dark covert government cigarette smoking man for our friends of the X-Files.
That would be the Cancer Man.
Cancer Man, yeah.
There
Let's
you
just say, there you go.
He knows what he's talking about.
He does. I appreciate that. U.S. technology. They're still saying that narrative. Do you, yes? No? I mean,
well,
they're saying that for the benefit of Russia and China.
Yeah, well, that's not Russian or Chinese.
That's a 1A question.
Russia stuff. Well, first of all, nothing fell off of it, so it wasn't Russian, and it wasn't stolen from us, so it wasn't Chinese. I'm American.
Hey, you know what? You're entitled. You've earned that right to say what you say.
So my opinion on that is
Oh yeah.
I stay on the fence 60-40. 60 that it's not something that we produced, and 40% that it could be a small chance. The serious repercussions of that is the fact that if we have quote unquote bogarted technology or had a cartel on technology, then literally the United States government would be responsible for untold millions and even more, probably way more than that, deaths all around the world where they could have used this technology to save people in emergency situations, got supplies and relief supplies to places in literally seconds. With this type of technology, they could have transported thousands of people out, every second. Even if you say you could only have fit 10 people inside one of these things, it moves at Mach 25. I mean, literally, it could be anywhere on the planet in half a minute. So 10 times a half a minute, bam, you could get a lot of people moved really quick. So
yeah, but the bodies couldn't absorb that though. It
depends on the technology. If there was something
inside that protects them.
Yeah, I mean, it basically all you have to do, if it uses some type of gravitational system using heavy gravity or like it would literally be outside of inertia. You wouldn't feel anything on the inside. You'd be like
discussing an inertial mass reduction device. Is that correct?
What's the formula for that?
I think if they figure out how to make a ship that's literally colder than the air around it but can move Mach 25, they might be able to master inertia.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question. This is let's see. Just wondered if in the 7 days Gary and crew were able to determine the size and the dimensions of the craft.
In generalities over the radar, you can, but we can see the general cross section. But it wasn't until the eyewitness account by Commander Fravor and other associated pilots, so we did find out that it was around a F-18 size Tic Tac or propane tank, whichever prefers or strikes your fancy.
Ryan, this is my man. I gotta give props to Ryan. Look at this.
Oh my god, I look even worse now. Now I look like a vampire.
You're a ghost.
Jesus.
Well, see,
He's-
I got caught in my underwear watching Rick and Morty.
Dude, I can't believe like
This
So
I
I'm like,
I was like,
don't look
SOS,
at any of
SOS.
this. Nobody look at any
we,
of this.
we need
stuff.
to zoom in,
By the way,
Gary. You hook
This
us up,
is
man.
just a handle for my GoPro. So if anybody
No,
thought
that was my
something
next
weird,
question. Can we say hello to your friend there?
Yeah.
He saved the day.
Yeah. So
This looks
Yeah,
so much
so-
worse. Please continue.
Brian, you're always a pretty boy. Just sit down. All right.
You got divas on here, man. Look at Micah is sporting the, that.
I'm just
petite-
gonna sit here and shut up and look pretty. Go,
Yeah,
please.
there you go.
You know, it's
Listen
funny
to the
is,
actual people.
I don't know how do I look to you guys?
Great.
Do I do a
Yeah, it
little
looks
weird?
awesome,
All right.
man.
Fine.
All right, so literally, I got a GoPro 9 and two $15 LED lights. That's it.
It works though. It
For
looks
you,
great.
Ryan.
What
that
am I
was the
doing
look.
wrong? I got like my major setup here, and I look like freaking
Oh,
What?
Twilight over
Ryan,
Yeah.
somewhere in the skies, hasn't that put your technology? I mean, doesn't that take you to the next level?
And my cheap HyperX mic.
Nice.
here. Nice, man.
You know,
But
while
look, it
we're all
looks
here,
cool, though.
Somewhere
I
in the
gotta-
credit card. Sorry.
I got to not a conspiracy theory, but here's a theory, and I'm actually having fun with this. But check this out. This is something, Tiffany, I shared with you earlier on a text that I was going to bring up some kind of a conspiracy, but it's not really conspiracy, a theory. You had sent me a picture the other night.
Oh God, did I?
Not one of those.
Jeez,
no.
my husband's gonna kill me.
No, I always when you do, I always go right to Brent and it's like, Brent, you sign off on. No, I'm joking. So you sent me something that you were watching. You and Brent were watching. It was a picture of Independence Day, right?
Mhm.
Do you remember doing that?
No,
Great Lakes. Okay, yeah. So there you go. So
guys, I have brain frogs, brain fog from Lyme disease. So don't ask me what I had for breakfast because I don't remember.
all right. So that we're going too far in the day.
I know. Yeah.
So you
what were
sent me
saying?
that picture, and to me, that's Independence Day is kind of one of my favorite movies to watch, especially at this time of the year. Micah, keep your eyes, don't roll. I don't want to see the whites of your eyes.
I was looking
So-
for aliens,
I
merely
know, yeah.
glancing.
So it dawned on me, Independence Day. Check this out. Follow me here. This year marks the 25th anniversary of Independence Day. It came out in 96. Now,
Shit,
a lot of
whoa.
people think that the movie itself came out on the 4th of July weekend or whatever. Technically, no. In fact, the movie actually dropped in some location on June 25th. So, okay, 25 years anniversary of Independence Day. It dropped June 25th, which the UAP report came out. The aliens attacked us on July 2nd in the movie. But we got
Oh, crap.
Contact in the desert started
Wow.
on June 25th, too.
Oh,
Yeah,
crap.
not to be a
important,
party
yeah.
pooper. Is this weekend? Do we need to look
Did you see that
up?
message from Bill Gates saying that he needed his extended family to figure out where they're going to go? He's going deep into the bunker.
Hey, he's not using.
Micah, you're gonna.
Okay.
I don't know. He might be talking about your bunker.
Nah.
All right,
You didn't get the memo from Bill
you're
Gates?
Military. Do you think we need to worry about some kind of because what happened for the record, people? On July 2nd, what was the date? So I'm looking at the plot here. July 2nd, for the record, is when this happened. Not to, put a scare in DC, I've got.
Okay, well, you're talking about false flags here. Maybe,
Why?
maybe
Hold on. What do you mean?
potential false flags coming up, and yeah,
I'm
there's
just, it's an
having us
anniversary.
fearful of an alien invasion. You don't think that that's
They didn't.
I'd
Do you
be
think
more,
Bill Pullman, the president, those characters saw it coming too?
yeah?
They were caught off guard.
They didn't see
There's
that
a ship.
sequel coming either, though.
Well, if
Yeah.
it weren't for the if it weren't for the collateral damage of all the people that just work there, if it was just the government, sure, whatever,
Do it.
take it out. We need a new Congress, anyways.
Yeah.
But I'd be more impressed if it was Mars Attacks instead of Independence
another
Day,
good
because
one.
Independence Day we stood a chance, we could fight back, and Mars Attacks was much more realistic. Like, hey, we're gonna be friends, and then
Frank
Nope.
would be the one that would eventually have to get into a UFO, a captured a UFO that we actually had that
No, that'd
Lazar
probably be
worked
like-
on. That UFO, he got into that, flew it to the mothership, and just put
Can
the
you
virus
imagine
in.
the press conference that Biden would give?
Oh God, no.
He'd forget what was happening.
No.
At this
Gary,
point,
do
to
you-
your
do you-
point, Gary, we need to
Nah, he would.
Yeah.
He would blame Trump for the attack.
right,
That was
we're-
before
yeah.
my time. Yeah.
we're
Gary,
we're-
do you,
go ahead.
do
Go
you
ahead, Rick.
think the Pentagon knows more than
Yes,
like
absolutely.
a lot more? Do you think
Like,
they
let me
know
put it
what's
this way.
going on?
Every single plane has a gun camera that's usually on.
Okay.
So
That's a good point. I never thought about that. So
every
many
single
sensors
ship,
out there.
I mean, everybody's got a 5K camera in their pocket at this point, or at least a 4K camera.
Yeah.
You may not be able to take an hour's worth of film with it, but I mean, my GoPro is only like just under $400. I mean, any sailor can afford that, and I mean that's a hell of a good quality camera when it comes to just having something just super available. So between everything that they have now, I guarantee for the last like at least 15 years, they've had tons and tons of footage. They've probably had radar data. They've probably had all kinds of stuff that have happened, like just anomalous events that would happen that, maybe they didn't do an interrogation, but they have the radar data from, and they know what it is. But the people that, took the data had no idea what they were encountering. So they just, we're just going to take that and study it. Don't worry about that. It's nothing. It was probably just clouds. Those stupid pesky cumulus nimbulus clouds, they cause all kinds of problems with that spontaneously forming ice and such. But
It's sort of
Good
funny.
point.
I talk about my husband being really into Bigfoot, but he's also had his own UFO experience, which he videoed. He got his first officer. He's captain on a MD-11, very large plane, going very fast for how big it is. And he caught a 10-second video of a craft that was about 80,000 feet and at 80,000 feet. And he did report it to air traffic control, and they sort of brushed him off, and they could not see it. They could not capture it on radar. They just couldn't see it. There was nothing there. But I mean, I would consider him to be one of the best observers. And he's been in the air for, I think, going on 37 years as a professional pilot. That's a long ass time to be in the air looking at things on a regular basis. He's, trained in meteorology. He's trained to know what's in the sky with him and communicate if there are unknown objects. And he literally was just like passed on to the next air traffic controller. And I mean,
well, he's not alone. It's happened to thousands of other pilots. I get hundreds of emails about commercial pilots, military personnel, military pilots, people that literally were just passengers in military planes. I got an email about a guy that was going from Sigonella, Italy to Bahrain in a COD, which is this tiny little prop plane piece of crap. I've flown in one before. It's honestly scary. It's like worse than a Cessna, because like everything on the inside is like nothing but wire runs, and there's nothing that's hidden. It's not, it's just super military, and it's just like, whoa, and they strap you right to the side of the cargo. So like the seats aren't even like permanent. They're
They're not padded or anything.
Yeah. Well, they got a little bit of padding, but I mean, it's just like one of the most horrible ways I've ever flown. But he's saying basically in a nutshell that they're like, hey, look, and there's like something just flying along with them, and then just gone. So this is a very common thing amongst anybody that's been. They may have only encountered it once or twice in their entire career, but then other guys is like dude, I see stuff all the time. I mean, some stuff I might be able to just lens flare, canopy flare, whatever, but they
Chinese lantern 80,000
yeah
feet.
But they say that they just don't understand why it hasn't been taken very serious. I mean, like, sounds like your husband's a pretty credible witness. I mean,
he spent more time in the air than on Earth.
Yeah, well, he's your husband, so I hope you think he's credible.
How about incredible? How's that?
Oh, whoa!
Hey, somebody's getting
Is
some
he
brownie
listening
points.
to this tonight, live up in the air?
Probably.
Yeah.
No, he landed in
He'll catch it later.
I have no idea where he landed. He landed somewhere in the US. No clue.
That's brownie points in the bank for later.
For later.
Wow. I'm getting a cavity over that, Tiffany.
This is exactly why, though, I
know.
think Kevin Day is right. Like, for everyone who has tried to report and was brushed off, like, yeah, I mean, they're never going to get an apology. That's never going to happen. But they deserve it, in my opinion. They tried to report it, and then they were told no, or they were, they were grounded or what have you for whatever job they had.
What about
But
the
now they're like,
JAL
you have
pilot?
to report this.
Do you
They're, like,
remember the
demanding
JAL?
Oh, Japan Airlines, yeah.
Yes. I mean, that guy lost
Great
his license for a few years, maybe a decade, and then he was able to fly again. But it was definitely had to have been traumatizing for a man who is just reporting what he's seeing. And I feel bad.
Well,
I feel
right,
bad for
really
people going through that.
Let's also talk about the fact, though, here's a guy who, again, even if it was an official discipline, and some would say that it was. I mean, this guy lost his ability to fly for a few years. Also a former military pilot, a guy who actually had knowledge of incidents and had actually cited the so-called Thomas Mantell incident. Now, I don't think that Mantell was killed by a UFO or anything. I think that he had been chasing an object. Edward Ruppelt from Blue Book thought that had been a skyhook balloon. But in any case, the fact that Captain Terauchi knew about that, and when they offered to have assistance, essentially military assistance, he said, no, I'd rather, request a diversion. I would like to actually change course. And as he did, he says that this great big walnut-shaped thing changes its course with him, and he's literally getting frightened at this point. But the FAA investigated that. Of course,
Delaney, right?
There were some documents that were recovered. John Greenwald actually has a trove of them there at the Black Vault, which is admirable work yet again. But let's not forget that the FBI were also in on that briefing at that time. I actually FOIA'd the FBI asking about any information about that, and they say that they have none. But they absolutely, make no mistake, were there at the time. We had President Reagan at the time, his scientific advisory board, who was also there in on that briefing and looking into this. A man was unable to fly for years, and yet apparently government agencies at the time took it very seriously. And you think about John Callahan, who'd been the head, I believe, of the FAA investigation at the time. He comes out years later and says, of course there was an investigation. Of course there were tapes. They tried to take everything. They didn't know I still had some of those tapes, but they tried to take everything and spirit it out of that room so that nobody would talk about it. This is what happens when somebody sees a damn mothership over Anchorage, Alaska. But look, I'm going to tell you right now, if that's how we treat commercial pilots with former military experience, when they're reporting a potential aviation hazard. And again, to what Gary's talking about, this is one of the big issues right now. And why I'm always talking about the NARCAP organization, National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomenon. Again, this is an organization that has for years, Ted Rowe has overseen this. He's their scientific director. They have collected reports from pilots for years. And again, even what we aren't able to, gain direct access to in terms of military encounters, many civilian pilots like Brent have had these very same sorts of things happen. And again, in my opinion, that's something that has to be made aware to the public, or what the public should be made aware of it. And it also needs to be something that people can plan for. There can be protocols, instituted in terms of trying to abet person, or rather to avoid potential threats, secondary though they may be, that may result from observations of UAP, because they do inherently present a distraction. So, there's a lot of concerns there, in my opinion. But I mean, the JL thing is an incredible case. Again, who knows what he saw? But I mean, there's a whole lot more going on there in terms of the bureaucracy, I think. And that component really, I hope, is something we're going to see less of in the years ahead. I hope.
And I think that, throughout the years, they tried to discredit these people in so many ways. But one of the things that I've learned, just being with a man who's been in the field for that long, is that you can't say they're alcoholics. You can't say they're on drugs, because they're not. These people are highly
tested.
they are highly tested. They make sure, if there's anything wrong on one flight, you get tested that moment. You don't even have time to get off the plane.
And not to mention that most of these guys that have flight status, they get regular psyche evals too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's one of the big things about, prior to this becoming the cool thing to do to report, is, reporting a UFO was basically saying, okay, well, next stop, psych ward. You have to go do a psyche eval. They have to make sure that you're not crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
did they do that with any of you guys, Gary, or the pilots, or anything that you know of? No,
I wasn't important enough.
I don't fly.
They were scared.
Yeah.
Well, because for a long time I was under the impression that nobody on my ship had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Well, what I alluded to earlier, and that it's already kind of out since the Contact in the Desert aired, and if you missed it, there was a great military panel there where I discussed the fact that all those years back, I thought one of the sonar technicians on our ship had told me that they had a contact, and I had always assumed that it was like, I didn't know really a whole lot about sonar, so I assumed it was just an active, they got a ping off of it, Well, come to find out, that's not the case. They weren't allowed to go active during the time, but they had a passive track on a flying object. Now, how they do that is every single object flying and moving through the water emits sound. Well, these emitted sound, but at a far lower level, say, to give you an idea, the sound coming from like a diesel sub, we'll say that's like a 10. It's super loud. But the sound coming from the quietest thing in our ocean right now, shy of marine mammals, mechanical wise, is one of our nuclear subs. That's literally the quietest thing in the ocean right now. All say that that's like a 2. This thing was like a 0.2. Like they had to really, they were not even sure that they even tracked something, and then all of a sudden they get busted in and said, "Hey, did you get that?" From the people on watch. And then then that's literally the moment that we went to general quarters. So there was absolutely something to that, and every single person that was a sonar technician or involved with that situation all had to sign non-disclosure agreements, and were basically told, if you talk about this, you're going to jail.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, and then there was actually the gentleman that told me about this. They actually threatened him and brought charges against him, because I wasn't the only person that he had talked to, but he didn't think on the ship it was that big of a deal. Well, apparently it was. So yeah, so that actually kind of surprised me, because I didn't hear anything about this, but apparently there were guys that actually came aboard and literally debriefed these guys, and I think
the MIB that were like secretly landing quickly.
But
were these the same people that took the?
I'm thinking
were these
that
the same people that took the block? The
the bricks were on the limits. But
okay.
I'm thinking that it was the same people that took my tapes, because back in the day when we had an event happen where we had actual tech reps come on board and take data from when we had a downed aircraft, it was a whole different feel. They came on board. We still had to do this chain of custody. They made eye contact. They talked to you. It was very personable. These guys came on board. They kind of stood off to the side. They wouldn't make eye contact with you. I signed. They kind of hurriedly took the tapes and then they walked off. So it had a whole different feel to it. So
It's a strange behavior.
Yeah.
so that's why it was always kind of like, yeah, well, I guess, duh, we just tracked UFOs. They're obviously going to take the tapes. So it wasn't a
Who took them?
surprise.
That's the question.
Yeah, they were just civilian clothes guys. The guy I always joke around as the men in khakis. But I think that these may have been the people that debriefed the sonar crew too, though, because they're
That's
the only
crazy.
people I know that came on board. But then again, I'm not privy to everything that happens. So
Right.
I mean,
But the fact that the sonar crew were the only ones to kind of sign non-disclosures,
I guess
when like these pilots didn't have to either, that's
Yeah, because
crazy.
Fravor has gone on record. I watched Rogan, that episode with Rogan not too long ago again.
yeah,
And he said that no MIB or no one came and blah blah blah. So, but you're
The thing. Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah. I mean, they weren't. I mean, they didn't look creepy or anything like that. They just looked like normal people. So I mean, it wasn't like some. I mean, the only thing that was odd is like they said, it would just they didn't really make eye contact. They were just all business, So I mean, if Fravor is right in his respect that he only stated things in this perspective at which he knew them in. So
that's fair.
He was the commander of this squadron. He was a very important person. He can only assume that he would be briefed on these types of things, and unfortunately, I gotta say it wasn't the case because,
Right.
A, my tapes were taken, B, we did have a whole crew on his own ship that signed non-disclosure agreements, and then I find out that all of our sonar technicians and some of the OSs and some other personnel that were involved all had to sign non-disclosure agreements. So, and I didn't even find out about that until a couple of weeks ago. Like maybe about four or 5 weeks ago. So I mean, these things are going to unfold more and more as more and more people, even my own memories aren't as good as you think they are. I've got,
Time.
Well, I got one of the sonar guys that came out after my first interview and said, there's no way you had a passive track or an active track because we didn't have our tail in the water. Now, him saying that to me means that we have this big sonar array that goes and gets dragged behind the ship. And whenever we have that out, it has all these sonar modules that they can actually do distance and direction for anything under the water using this thing. And if they don't have that in the water, generally they only know something is in that direction. They can't get all the detail and the information that they can when they're go active. So he said, no, we didn't have the tail in the water, so we definitely couldn't have had that information.
Tiffany, I see there's a question for Gary. I'll let you do that. And where are we at?
Sorry, I start running.
No, you're good.
No, man.
Everybody's good.
Please.
I just want to keep the time frame in perspective. There's two more topics I want to throw at you guys before we shut it down. So Tiffany, there's a question if you want to share that.
Mm-hmm. So the Outcast Creative says, during his time of duty in the service, was this the only encounter of this type, or were there others that were unexplained?
Nothing of the UFO type. But in January of the same year, I had the only actual psychic experience in my entire life. And the only reason I even believe that any of this psychic stuff is even plausible. And until after my grandmother died, I didn't even believe it was a psychic experience. But I did have a dream of all of the events that happened from a certain point of the night my grandmother died until the moment that I went and actually got to the hospital. And, it was like play by play. And literally the only thing that changed was something I chose to actively change. And it was like literally the most, I'm like thinking, I love my grandma, but the lotto would have been much better on this one. But yeah, I had a very deep connection with my grandmother. And it was funny because my grandma T, which was her mom, which doesn't travel very much, came to Florida the day before she died. Also, me, my grandma T, and my grandmother always had a very, very strong connection to each other. Kind of like almost like those. Everybody has somebody in their life that you don't really have to talk to. You just kind of understand each other, and it could be a family member, it could be a loved one, it could be just your best friend from high school. There's always somebody that you have a connection like that. Me, my grandma, and my great grandma were always like that. They always knew exactly when I was hungry and what I wanted. I always knew when my grandma wanted a big hug, even from the other room. I always, we were always that close. I mean, maybe not, talking to each other in our heads or anything like that, but just, it just seemed like you just always understood, And then when she died, it was just kind of blew my mind because I literally just dreamt every moment. Wow. Play by play, straight deja vu for almost 3.5 hours. Okay. So it was an odd thing for me to know that was an actual possibility in this world. So that was the first thing that had happened that year. And then, of course, in September, this happens, and it was like, we'll just say it kind of blows open the doors for you, and you kind of start thinking things in a different way.
Well, let me tell you, on Thursday night before the report was coming out, I sort of contemplated it before going to lay down and get ready for bed. And that night, I laid my head down and automatically started getting a download of like thousands and thousands of images going through my head as fast as lightning, just going. I can't even tell you what they were at the moment, because I was like, holy shit. It's like, I feel like it's related. I'm wanting to know about something that I'm never going to have all the answers to. And before, I guess my mindset was, I'm prepared to find out what they've got, but I was also opening my mind up for the evening because I have a lot of visitations at night. But as soon as I closed my eyes, I was getting these downloads of thousands of images and feelings and destruction and other places. And I don't think that it's I don't think it was related to the report. Essentially, I think it was just sort of like me opening my brain up to something else, and they latched on and just started downloading. I would love to see what those images are. I would like to be able to retrieve some of those images.
Well, luckily,
let me hold on, Gary. Let me just, I don't know, to know Tiffany's backstory. She's an experiencer. She has visitations, and I've said this with Tiffany, with people who we've talked to, that the Terry Loveless implants and all this stuff. I'm thinking you guys, Tiffany, are getting the memo, whether it's mental or whatever, before the rest of us, because of your connection with something out there. So you're not thinking really Thursday night, the day before, something like this, which is huge in our lifetime.
I was going back and I was thinking about where I was in 2004 when they had these videos pop up, right? And in 2004, I was in Greece. I was working on NAMFI, which was a NATO missile launching and firing installation. Working as a contractor for the DoD, and I was working second and third shift, and third shift was the hardest one because I was alone in the building by myself, and I had some of the MPs around me, but they were Greek, and only a few of the American military on the base at all. It was literally just me in a building. And there were many nights where I would go into work and all of a sudden it would be 8 a.m. and I wouldn't have had a freaking clue where the time had gone. And it wasn't like I was taking a nap and decided just to go to bed at my desk. It was literally hours gone. And I didn't have anything to relate it to at that point in my life. I was 21 to 24 years old, something like that. And I didn't have anything to really relate it to until later in life when I started having constant visitations from these entities. And I do think there's a long backstory on how I got involved with the military. And it had to do with my grandfather being in the Strategic Air Command of the Air Force for his career. And I was accepted to the Air Force Academy sort of out of the blue. And most people don't do that. There was a reason why I was there. And I don't think it was just to work on the base. I think that I was placed in a position where they would have access. And I would like, I sometimes fear that at some point I'm going to be picked up and like may just vanish because, or have somebody show up at my door, like you said, the men in khakis, wondering what the hell happened. Tell us your story, or maybe you should shut up and don't tell your story anymore. That's sort of where I am going. And like Kevin said, we're on this journey together. Micah, you and I are on this journey together. You and I have been, able to speak about these situations for years. And I began to have more psychic experiences after being in Greece. There were places that I could go, and I call them places of power because I would get these downloads and hours would be missing. And I don't know, maybe I have a faulty brain. Maybe my brain is screwed up. It could be. I don't have an answer. All I know is that there's more to this life than we know. There's more questions than answers. And it's important because we are not the only ones who are involved in this whole scenario. It's a human scenario, and there are people all over the earth experiencing these things. And I feel that we are at a point where we are not going to shut up. We need to continue the conversation. These stories are our legacy to our children. We are finding out the answers as we go along. And hopefully there will be a book that explains it all. I don't
this
have
is also
my
generational with your family too, Tiffany.
Yeah. But my situations have been really overwhelming.
Definitely to the extreme. But there is a narrative in your family, a storyline, if you will. Well,
I had 3 people in my family that were in intelligence.
There you
go.
Yeah.
Assuming that you're probably not there yet, but at least 30, your generations prior to you.
I am 25.
Well, hey, someday when you grow up,
I was working.
When you grow up,
I was working in Greece. I was working in Greece at 12. Okay.
Yeah. So you got to remember that even if your parents and great grandparents had these crazy experiences like you, they wouldn't have talked about them in that generation, and they could have died never telling you ever that something happened to them. And that's a very common thing in that generation. And I think it happened a lot more than people gave it credit for. And also you're in good company because I already know my brain doesn't work right. So there was one thing that I always thought was just something that happened to me. And this was kind of like a one-off thing that I recently have been speaking with other people that were experiencers and, and some people that do heavy meditation and things like that. And there's this one experience where it could happen at any time, whether you're meditating or just sitting in your car, where all of a sudden you just surreally understand, like, you're like in the absolute moment, and this, for some reason, you just have this crazy understanding of everything all at once, and it's just a feeling of the understanding of everything, and yet you can almost look, it's like almost like an oily something that you just can't quite grasp. The harder you try to grab it, the faster it leaves. So you just kind of sit there and you just let it just linger, and it seems to be a very common thing amongst people like us that think too far ahead of everything, that think too much about everything. And, it's like one of these days, I wish I could just hold on to it and understand exactly where that's coming from, because I know it's something.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's...
Do you feel like it's maybe part of the fact that we are all conscious beings? We are connected in some way cosmically. I feel like every person has the ability to have some form of telepathic ability in some regards, psychic ability in some regards. No matter, some people are more prone and active in their minds and connected to their inner self. But sorry, you can continue.
Well, honestly, this line of thought, that's something that's happened to me in my entire life, since I was a little kid, so I never knew that it was anything weird or, or off-putting. But this line of thought only kind of coalesced and came together when I was looking at an article on quantum entanglement. And then I started thinking, all right, well, if light particles are quantumly or can be quantumly entangled, generally that means that they probably had some type of relationship prior to that. And, well, what if all matter, all existence is quantum entangled, which would make sense since everything started with supposedly the Big Bang, which I say supposedly because I'm thinking, because obviously we don't know anything prior to that. What happens if it was not so much of an explosion, but consciousness coalescing into reality?
Oh, wow. That's deep.
And so
I like that.
From there, I moved to another thought experiment. Well, if consciousness moved into reality and created the existence, and then, as soon as the first subatomic particle came into existence, there was an infinite amount of possibilities of what that particle could have been. Well, there was, some type of subatomic particle, an electron, or a neutron, whatever it was. It doesn't really matter what it was. It just, there was an infinite amount of choices of what it could have been, which means that there has to be, in my mind, an infinite amount of universal plausibilities. So hence, every single one of those plausibilities has to have its own unique individual reality. Hence, now I honestly think that there is an infinite amount of realities and infinite amount of dimensions that make the lattice work of our own reality. So that's the horrible rabbit holes that I fall down. There you go. Welcome to my mind.
Ryan, what do you look like you've got something going on? Tell me what your thoughts are.
I'm like, no, it's blowing my mind. I didn't think this conversation was going this way, but I am here for it. It's awesome. No, I think there's something to this whole consciousness aspect. I guess drawing it back to the whole UAP thing, I always have thought that so many people have looked into it, Jacques Vallée and even Hynek at one point as well. So I think, yeah, absolutely. I've never thought of the Big Bang as being like the birth of consciousness either.
That's
not
awesome.
this like scientific evolution thing, but actually like just blinking into existence somehow, some way. And that everyone in every time period and whatever is somehow connected. So that's fascinating.
The connection
I do not,
in a connection in a world like that for me would be the fact that there would not really be a thing called, time doesn't really exist on the quantum level. I mean, so every time period would exist at the same time, which means that every version of you would exist at the same time. And that the only difference is where your consciousness is. Right. And that you can change your, as they say, change your stars just by moving your consciousness to a different, version of the reality based off of your conscious decisions. Because for every decision you make, you have trillions of cells in your body, and every single one of those cells then has an infinite amount of things that they can do, and so on and so on and so on. It gets become where it almost hurts your head to think about it.
It's too much, I know.
Yeah. So the other thing I thought, well, if that's possible, well, then that would mean that there's an infinite amount of energy at any given point in any reality. So hence, the energy crisis can be solved that way. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I've got too many things going on in my head. But
that's why I have to take Ambien at night, because I can't sleep. All this shit noodling in my head.
You never sleep. I know.
We're over 2 hours, and I want to wrap this up because but I got to show this clip. What, dear? What? What'd you say, loser?
We'll have to do a part 2.
Yeah, well, no. I've got.
That's when you just keep going and you make it 2 parts.
I know. Yeah, I know. We'll do it. You're Gary, Ryan. Why have you been hiding Gary all this time from us? So
that's because he refuses to give me an interview.
My God!
You know what? Now we'll bypass the broker.
He always gives me crap about this. No, me and Gary are becoming good friends. He can rag on me all.
I like him. I'm glad he's here. I
He's
gotta
brilliant, man.
show this clip because I reached out to. This is John Greenwald, the Black Vault. I reached out to him for permission to do this, and he gave it to me. But I want to share this clip with you guys. Setting it up, he put out, Mr. Foya put out a request to search. He wanted to do a search for Bill Nelson, who is the NASA administrator, emails related to UFOs, UAPs, starting with the day he took that position, which was May 3rd, through at the time he did the request, June 10th. I'm going to play an excerpt of this, and because it clearly seems like Bill, guys, you're familiar with Bill Nelson, correct? Mm-hmm. Obviously.
Yeah.
Tiffany, you do.
Oh, Gary doesn't. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll
I really don't know anybody very much.
Okay. Fair enough.
Kevin, I hate saying I don't know something, but I will let you know I don't know.
Well, okay.
I guess you're going to show me.
Now we're going to know. Check us out.
Now, to my surprise, what this is on May 29th, just days prior to that press conference that he was, or panel that he was on that aired on C-SPAN, and of course the clip with UFOs is what is best known from that. Just days prior, what happened was they had sent out, and it's unclear exactly who got it, but obviously Bill Nelson was one of them, an internal distributed document on preparation for certain topics. You can see here the top items, according to them, was the 2022 NASA full budget proposal, Earth System Observatory, hurricanes and NASA, and search for life technosignatures and UAPs/UFOs. Now, what's interesting about it is if you jump into this document, which they released, it is, let me see here, about 16 pages in total length, including the email itself. You can see here, this is the search for life technosignatures and UAP UFOs. I'm going to go ahead and read it to you just in case it's not clear coming through here on YouTube. Public and media interest in the topic of unidentified aerial phenomenon/unidentified flying objects has seen an uptick in recent weeks following reports about the Department of Defense's release of 3 unclassified Navy videos. Likewise, the 2021 Intelligence Authorization Act, signed in December of 2020, stipulated the government had 180 days to gather and analyze data from disparate agencies. Below is our response to the public and media who call for NASA comments. So here is essentially the approved language or the approved point that they wanted. So they distribute this internally for spokespeople, people like Bill Nelson who are going to be in front of the cameras, and essentially it's stick to the script. And here's what it said. One of NASA's key goals is the search for life in the universe. To date, NASA has yet to find any credible evidence of extraterrestrial life. However, NASA is exploring the solar system and beyond to help us answer fundamental questions, including whether we are alone in the universe. We stand ready to support the rest of the government in the search for life in the universe, be it close to home, on the planets or moons of our solar system, or deeper in space. What I find really interesting is the fact that NASA kind of chimed in at all, because as the DoD is essentially shying away from the whole alien thing, UFOs comes up to NASA and they go, yep, we're looking for life in the universe. So they kind of like take the leap to saying that's what their assist is essentially all about, that is what they are doing. So that was the approved script. All of the other pages and paragraphs and so on don't mention UFOs, but I figured I would highlight this because now you can see what was approved for Bill Nelson, internally approved, and what they wanted him to essentially stick to the script on.
Do you think this...
Okay, that was enough. Micah, unpack that real quick.
Well, no surprise there. A lot of folks who work with the space program are very interested in the search for extraterrestrial life. Of course, it's been part of what they do, although they do it in a different way. They're peering through telescopes. They're not looking for evidence of technosignatures right here near Earth. Now, there was a paper a little while ago that was co-authored by Ravi Kapramarapu, Jakob Haq Misra, a number of others. I think it's Kaparapu. I always mess up his name.
Can you spell that for us, please?
Yeah, K-O. Yeah. Let's try this. That might convey it a little better. No, Ravi Kaparapu, Jakob Haq Misra, and three other individuals. They've kind of co-authored a number of papers that are looking at prospective ways that information might be gleaned about the evidence that we need in order to prove extraterrestrials exist. Now, the way that they're intending to go about that is looking for technosignatures, which NASA's been doing for a while. And to really pack a long story into a very kind of a short, projected punch here, they're looking for significant amounts of technology on a distant alien planet that's indicative of a highly advanced civilization, Dyson spheres, things along those lines, or, for that matter, climate change, which would, be an indicator of industrialization on that planet. But what Ravi and Jakob and some of these guys have begun to do is, well, let's start bringing the search a little closer to home, and let's see if we can actually find evidence of some kind of a technology closer. What's really intriguing is that they began to propose we look on the moon, we look on nearby asteroids, we look for radio emissions and things that might be produced by asteroids. Look for anything that might be any kind of a technosignature, but not exclusively on other planets. And I'm like, you guys are starting to get the idea. Bring it a little closer, a little closer. And so I reached out to both those two co-authors of the paper and asked them, what about looking within Earth's own atmosphere? I mean, should we not be looking within our atmosphere for potential technosignatures? Now, what's really interesting is there was no official statement made by NASA at that time along these lines. And to my knowledge, me reaching out to those two scientists and others I've corresponded with off the record, was prior to John getting that email response. But interestingly, many of them had said essentially to me that, look, UAPs exist. I mean, I actually had one scientist say to me, a NASA research scientist, UAPs exist. And we don't know what they are, but they need to be studied. We need more scientists looking at them. And we really think it's incumbent upon the government to start sharing more data about what they've collected. But I think that after this report dropped, like we said earlier, the fact that we had a DoD statement, Kathleen Hicks memorandum, we had a NASA statement, we had numerous statements from senators, elected officials. What this really says to me is, hey, NASA's like, okay, at this point, and I think that Bill Nelson, after having taken the helm, he has been instrumental in this. But I mean, they're saying, look, if indeed there is information being collected, these may be the kinds of technosignatures that some have been asking about. And that indeed maybe we have been searching for, but looking for them out there. And if we can find them here, and if NASA is using data, again, NASA's Earth Data website makes available all kinds of information that they collect about our planet, by monitoring it with satellite systems and other kinds of data systems. That's all freely available to the public. So one thing I've actually
are they still scrubbing that data though?
That's a good question. If they
real-time data or 10-second
that's
delay.
Another conversation. Let's say that's another conversation. I can't speak to that point. But what I will tell you is that with the data that's been made available, I've spoken to some NASA research scientists myself about, can we engage in a civilian effort to actually start, finding ways, whether through artificial intelligence or something else, to comb through some of this available data. Look for instance, uncorrelated weather phenomena, lightning strike magnitude flashes that aren't correlated with weather systems, anything that might be an indicator of some kind of a technological signature that's existing in public data. That would be really interesting. I don't have personally the resources to be able to do it, but again, the information, the data is potentially out there. I'm glad to see that folks at NASA are at least looking at the possibility of moving forward with trying to assess some of the information that they collect and see if indeed it might corroborate some of the efforts currently underway with the UAP task force.
Wow. Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
there was one program that they're doing on the ISS that was interested me, and it's one where they're literally staring at the Earth 24 hours a day looking for lightning strikes.
Yeah.
And ironically, how I found out about this is I always thought the area I live in was the lightning strike capital of the world, because for a long time it was. Well, I come to find out this study they were doing on the ISS for lightning, they found a place in South America that literally storms 365 days a year. That has more lightning hits than anywhere where I live, but we're a very close second, so, we're still the lightning capital, at least the United States. But if they're staring at the Earth enough to see lightning strikes, can they detect large anomalous energy? Can they detect what else can they detect with the sensors that they're using to detect lightning? I'd love to see the metadata on, a project like that, but I have yet to be able to actually get a hold of that data, because it's supposed to be in the public domain, but then it's not.
We had a storm last week that was absolutely wicked. But I was standing at my sink and I was washing dishes, and out the side of the window, big monster windows, I saw lightning that cracked louder than I've ever heard. And it was a ball, like literally ball lightning that originated inside my trees. I didn't see anything else outside of it, but it literally was the most massive ball. I'd never even seen anything like that.
It's one of the most rare.
Crazy.
It's one of the most rare forms of lightning for you to be able to see. Be privileged the fact that you actually witnessed that in real life.
It scared the absolute shit out of me. I mean, I jumped out of my skin.
Whoa!
I didn't know what it was.
More importantly, Tiffany, you were doing dishes?
Indeed, there is
That's the true mystery
here.
And we see the domestic side.
Yeah, Brent said you cannot do your podcast until you do your chores, Tiffany.
He does that all the time. He's like, you can't do your podcast until you do your chores. Then I'm like,
Ryan, switch gears real quick. The clip from John, your take real quick.
Oh no, I think the thing I take out of that is that NASA is kind of, again, they're like, I think the DoD did with the Pentagon task force. It's like, we're gonna hold you to this, that like this is gonna continue and you're gonna get more people involved. So I see NASA being kind of like flexing, being like, hey, like this is what we're here for. UAP is part of what we do. We want to try to understand and monitor these things. So let's see if there are connections between our search for technosignatures and possibly what some of these UAP could represent. And then I look at something like Steve McDaniel working with Micah, with this Sky-Hub thing. It's literally the mission statement of Sky-Hub, a civilian-run software, AI algorithm to track UFOs and decipher what they are, is what the Pentagon Task Force said in the report they want to do. It's already built.
Now,
it's already there.
I have a sneaking suspicion that might be the company that they're working with.
I hope so. And if Gary's saying that, I think there's some credence to that. So I think that's amazing.
I haven't heard anything personally. It's more through somebody through somebody. But I know that they definitely were looking at that technology at one point. So it's when I read that, I was like, oh well, I know who that is. And then when I was reading that last statement that he played, it's like, did they just steal this from our website?
Oh, like, UAPX, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, literally, except for the search for alien life, because I actually took that out of it because I was like, I felt more comfortable doing a scientific research with that in the description. But basically through technosignatures, we are looking for UAPs to understand them, know them, and track them, and be able to study them. So it's like Yep, you guys, you're behind the ball here. We already know what we're looking for. We just got to figure out how to, you know. And the first thing I would say is, if they're serious about doing this, well, release all the scrubbed video and pictures that they have from the 60s on, because I mean they've got edited video and edited pictures for literally as long as they've been around. So if they're serious about this, then they need to start releasing some of that stuff.
Good take. Tiffany, we got to shut this down. Yeah.
You mean you have work tomorrow?
I do. I actually have a life in the morning that I have to accommodate. Tonight, Tiffany, I'd give it a thumbs up for our Secrets 3.0 reboot. Micah Hanks,
We did it, guys.
Ryan Sprague, who took care of us tonight. You know, Sean Cahill, just giving him a shout out. He was going to be the third guy on the show, and he had something come up. And
yes, sorry, I settled for the beard instead of the epic hair.
Dude, you saved a day.
You came on, and great stuff. And Gary, I've reached out to you on Facebook, so we'll connect and we'll do this again. But Tiffany, give us your final take.
Well, first of all, I didn't realize how long we were going to be able to go with this, but you guys
We can
so easy.
You know, we don't have to worry about bumping Jimmy Church on the other.
I know. Yeah. No, I appreciate you all taking 2.5 hours of your life when I all know that you guys are the busiest guys in the world. And I really appreciate you guys coming on, helping us out on our first show in 3.0 New World Order of Universal Secrets. But thank you so much for coming on tonight. You killed it. Glad to have you guys as friends, and hope to see you guys in the real world soon. So we will have to discuss that
offline. Yeah, definitely. Thank our friends who were in the chat room hanging with us.
Yes.
Good stuff. Good questions. And yeah, Tiffany, this was a good night. Again, Micah, Ryan, Gary, thanks so much for doing this. Gary, you and Micah have history, right? You all know each other.
I think everybody but you two.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to leave you this. It's just a sample real quick. Check this out, Gary.
Do you love The Shining? I just love it. Do you love it?
There you go.
That was looking for Gary.
Poor Micah.
Poor Gary.
This is right there, Gary's reaction. That's the way the show. That's priceless right there.
You're now near and dear to my heart.
Exactly.
You know what? He puts up with a lot of BS from me.
Gary, I just hope I'm near and dear to your heart now too.
Always.
All right, guys. We're signing off. Just humor us and stay with us for a minute for post stuff. Again, thank the audience for hanging with us. We'll be back. Tiffany, I teased you. This is how I end the show. See you next Tuesday. Peace out, my friends. Where's my outro? There it is. Okay. This has been Universal Secrets.